Chapter 379. The 30-odd people were surrounding a young man in the middle. Emosher also took a second look. This young man was not as bright as a man. Instead, he had the femininity of a woman. His face was more delicate than a woman's, and his lips were more enchanting than a woman's. Every move he made didn't seem masculine at all. This made Emosher think of two words: little fresh meat. Could it be that there were also fangirls in the flaming land who chased after little fresh meat? Zhang Xian swiftly plundered their memories and examined them carefully before coming to a realization. This person was called Bufan. He was a disciple of the Heavenly Gold sect, the #1 force in the 16 prefectures of Serene Cloud. He was also the personal disciple of the Heavenly Gold sect's first elder. Therefore, in the eyes of these people, his status was even more honorable than the sect masters of other forces. While Emosher was observing the little fresh meat was also sizing up Emosher. After sizing up Emosher for a while, he looked at Emma, who was beside Emosher. His gaze moved between Emma and her son, and finally landed on Emma. He looked for a full 5 seconds before retracting his gaze. Emosher frowned slightly. This person's gaze was a little strange. However, no matter who you are, if you dare to provoke me, I can only apologize. Half an hour later, it was finally Emosher's turn to be teleported. Soon, they were teleported to the 10th hunting ground, the Blood Wolf Star. It was currently daytime. The Blood Wolf Star rotated very slowly. A day was equivalent to a month in the Flaming Land. Although vampires aren't as afraid of sunlight as you say, they still feel uncomfortable when the sun shines on them. Therefore, there were fewer blood breeds active during the day than at night. This was also why Emosher had waited until today to come to the 10th hunting ground. Today was the beginning of the day. He glanced to the east. The sun had just broken free from the darkness and was hanging in the eastern sky. In addition to the sun, there was a huge red planet floating in the southern sky. From the naked eye, this huge blood-red planet was thousands of times larger than the sun. It almost took up half of the sky. However, in terms of brightness, it was slightly weaker than the sun. Around the blood-red planet, there was a ring of stars that emitted a crystalline blue light. Although Emosher already had some understanding of this before he came, he was still shocked when he saw this magnificent scene. Just like Emosher, the people who had been teleported here with him were also stunned by this magnificent scene. However, Bufan from the Sky Gold sect had his eyes fixed on Emma and her son. Emma also noticed that there was something wrong with this person's gaze. She couldn't help but shield her son behind her. She shifted her body and hid behind Emosher. She wasn't afraid of Bufan of the Celestial Gold sect, but she was afraid of causing trouble for Emosher. Apart from the magnificent view in the sky, the scenery on the ground of the Blood Wolf Star was much more magnificent than that of the Flaming Dawn continent. In the distance were ring-shaped mountains. However, these craters were not craters formed by meteorites. Instead, they were volcanoes. There were probably hundreds of them. These volcanoes were covered in lush vegetation and ancient trees. Closer to them was a plain. A large river meandered across the plain. Following this river, one could reach the city of the natives of the Blood Wolf Star after traveling for more than 500 kilometers. Although the civilization of the Blood Wolf Star hadn't reached the level of civilization on Earth, it wasn't a barbaric era. The people here already knew how to use some technology. It was almost equivalent to the Middle Ages. There were temples and paladins. However, among these paladins, the strongest could only reach the strength of a level 5 hunter. Therefore, any level 10 hunter who came to the Blood Wolf Star could easily crush these paladins. Emosher glanced at the people who had been teleported here with him. They were basically flying along the river towards the city. Firstly, it was their first time here and they had to go to the city to get a better understanding of this planet. Secondly, the natives treated these people like gods. In the city, they ate well and drank well, and they could even do whatever they wanted. Of course, the difference between this and the second hunting ground was that these people wouldn't kill the innocent in the city. After all, the stronger one was, the higher one's vision would be, and the more one would see things from a different perspective. For example, if a child saw a group of ants, he would very likely step on them and burn them with boiling water. However, a normal adult wouldn't pay attention to ants. Of course, this didn't rule out the occasional pervert who specialized in torturing and killing animals. However, embark didn't go to the city. He came to this planet this time to improve his strength. He didn't want to interact with too many people. He wasn't such a pure person. After these people left, embark strolled around the plane to see if he could meet any blood breeds. It was said that the blood breeds he met during the day were those who couldn't survive among the blood breeds. They could only come out during the day and risk their lives to find food. However, although they were level 10 evolved blood breeds, their strength was weaker than other blood breeds. This was the perfect time for embark to obtain the giant dragon blood. After strolling for about half an hour, he looked at the sun in the sky. It was still so high, as if it had never moved. At this moment, embark's dragon cognition had already detected a blood breed in the forest on the cliff to the right. Perhaps it had not drunk human blood for too long, but it had just killed a blood fiend and was crazily devouring the blood of this mutated blood fiend. Embark immediately brought Emma and her son towards this evolved blood breed. After a few minutes, they arrived behind the blood breed. He saw that it was lying on the ground, its hands grabbing the blood fiend and its mouth firmly pressed against the blood fiend's neck. Coo, coo, coo. It was continuously devouring the blood of the blood fiend. It didn't seem to have the elegance that a blood breed should have. She must have been starving. When a blood breed was hungry to a certain extent, elegance and aristocratic temperament were all nonsense. Embark glanced at the blood breed's level 10 evolved blood breed. It was equivalent to a level 10 scavenger. At this moment, the blood breed had also noticed embark's arrival. Its blood-red eyes immediately revealed a thirsty look. It let out an excited cry from its throat. Yo, fresh human blood. As it spoke, it leaped towards embark. Embark had already signaled for Emma and her son to move aside. Then, his figure flashed and he appeared behind the blood breed. Just like before, he did not use any energy. He directly engaged in close combat. The sharp claws on his right hand had already condensed, and he slashed towards the blood breed's neck. However, although a level 10 evolved blood breed was equivalent to a level 10 scavenger in terms of level, it was much stronger than a level 10 scavenger in many aspects. Especially its speed. It dodged embark's attack in a flash. It let out another roar from its throat. A mere level 8 scavenger dares to be impudent in front of me? Chapter 380. The blood breed dodged embark's attack and stretched out his right claw towards embark's neck. Embark teleported again and appeared behind the blood breed in an instant. His sharp claws grabbed towards the blood breed again. The blood breed's reaction wasn't slow either. He dodged embark's sharp claws again. At the same time, he let out a slightly angry roar from his mouth. A mere level 5 hunter had almost made him suffer twice in a row. How could the arrogant blood breed not be angry? In his anger, his claws grew again, reaching a length of more than a foot. His eyes were blood red as he grabbed towards embark. Seeing this, embark didn't dodge. He directly used his own sharp claws to block. Crack, 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 a few soft sounds. The blood breed's sharp claws were directly cut off by embark's sharp claws. The blood breed's figure quickly retreated, shocked and angry. What surprised him was that this level 5 hunter had actually cut off his own claws. He was angry because this lowly human actually cut off the claws of a noble blood breed. Preposterous! In the violent roar, the blood breed's eyes became more and more blood red. The shoulder blades on his back protruded, piercing through his clothes. Hiss! A pair of devil wings stretched out from his back. At first, it was just a pair of small wings that looked like chicken wings. Then it began to grow bigger and longer. However, how rich was embark's combat experience? He wouldn't be like those protagonists in movies, anime, and novels, who would watch their opponents transform. When the pair of devil wings suddenly appeared, embark had already flashed again and appeared behind the blood breed. His sharp claws pierced towards the blood breed's back. But at this moment, The pair of devil wings that had just spread out to about a meter suddenly straightened and caught Emoshur's hands. And on that pair of wings, there were dozens of Sanguisurincus as thick as fingers. They wrapped around Emoshur's wrist. The blood breed's head suddenly turned. There was a bit of ruthlessness on his face, mixed with a bit of pride. Hee, you didn't expect this, did you? Before he could finish his words, blue and white lightning suddenly flashed between Emoshur's hands. Hey, streaks of electricity flowed along Emoshur's hands and climbed up the vampire's body. The Blood Clan member trembled from the electric shock. Emoshur took the opportunity to push his right hand forward. His right claw pierced the Blood Clan member's back. The Blood Clan member screamed, but he didn't fall. Instead, he turned his head around 180 degrees. Both of his arms were twisted in reverse. It was equivalent to turning all four limbs and head around without even turning around. The situation looked rather frightening. His pair of sharp claws slashed towards Emoshur's arms. Emoshur wanted to dodge. However, his wrists were once again entangled by the Sanguisurincus. For a moment, he was unable to break free. Poof, poof, two soft sounds were heard. Emoshur's arms were chopped off. Blood immediately gushed out. It sprayed all over the vampire's body and face. When the vampire smelled the blood, he became even more excited. He became ferocious. He stuck out his tongue and licked the blood off his mouth. At this time, his wings were already more than 5 meters wide. He hugged Emoshur with both of his hands. This time, let's see where you can run to. As he spoke, he opened his mouth wide. Hiss! As he opened his mouth actually cracked wider and wider. It cracked all the way to the back of his ears. At the same time, the teeth in his mouth grew longer and longer. Then he bit down on Emoshur fiercely. His mouth was already close to Emoshur's neck. The 2 rows of teeth were about to bite Emoshur's neck. Even Emma, who was not far away, couldn't help but feel nervous at this time, no matter how blind she believed in Emoshur. Hiss! Behind her, a pair of blood-red demon wings also spread out. She was about to rush over. But at this moment, just as Emoshur's neck was about to be bitten open and the blood in his body was about to be sucked clean. However, the other Emoshur had already appeared behind the Blood Clan member. Whoosh! His sharp claws drew a semicircular arc in the air. The vampire's head immediately flew into the air. One could see the vampire's expression of disbelief when his head was in the air. His hands were still holding this human tightly. Why would another human appear behind him? But even if his head was flying in the air, he still didn't die. More than 10 Sanguisurincus as thick as fingers poked out from the cut on his neck. They shot out like lightning and flew towards his head. More than 10 Sanguisurincus as thick as fingers also shot out from the cut on his head. They shot towards his body like lightning. More than 10 Sanguisurincus intersected in the air and quickly merged together. Then they pulled the head and quickly fell towards the neck. Seeing this, Emoshur. He jumped up. He turned half a circle in the air and kicked the head heavily with his right foot. Bang! The head instantly flew thousands of meters away. Crack, crack, crack. Many trees were knocked down. Then, it crashed heavily on the cliff behind. It was directly embedded in the cliff. Crack, crack, spiderweb-like cracks began to appear on the surrounding stone walls. Only then did Emoshur land from the air. What was the upside-down golden hook? This was it. Emoshur sighed in his heart. If the national football team had such footwork, they wouldn't have been scolded like dogs. Next, without the head, this body was easy to deal with. Emoshur waved his claws repeatedly, and this body didn't have any strength to resist. It was directly chopped into meat paste by Emoshur. But until now, Emoshur's mind didn't receive the notification that he had killed a level 10 evolved vampire. Obviously, this guy hadn't died yet. Emoshur had no choice but to go to the vampire's head again. The vampire's head was now embedded in the stone wall. But he wasn't dead. He opened a pair of blood-red eyes and looked at Emoshur in horror. What do you want to do? Emoshur didn't say anything more to him. After robbing his memory, his sharp claws directly pierced through this head. In his mind, a system notification finally came. Killed one level 10 evolved vampire. received 10 points of giant dragon blood. Emosher finally breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed that these evolved vampires would only die if their heads were destroyed. Speaking of which, killing this vampire really took a lot of effort. Previously, in the flaming beginning continent, Emosher could easily kill a level 10 hunter without using energy. In the end, killing a level 10 evolved blood clan member was actually such a hassle. These level 10 evolved vampires were much stronger than level 10 hunters. It was no wonder that those level 10 hunters wanted to have a breakthrough and came here to gain experience. Only on this Blood Wolf star, facing these powerful evolved vampires, could it be more possible to stimulate their potential and increase their chances of breaking through. Emma, who wasn't far away, saw this situation and retracted her wings. Master's strength had actually reached such a level. If he were to use his energy, the blood breeds would basically be killed in an instant. Chapter 381. In fact, it seemed like Emosher and the other party were evenly matched in this battle. He took 7 points to kill the vampire. But in fact, Emosher firmly held the initiative throughout the entire battle. He didn't give the vampire any chance at all. His so-called great effort was actually an easy victory in the eyes of others. Of course, no one saw Emosher's battle at the moment. If anyone knew that Emosher, a mere level 8 hunter, killed a vampire 2 levels above him and killed a level 10 evolved vampire without using any energy, they would be shocked. They wouldn't know how to feel. From this vampire's memory, Emosher knew the locations of the other vampires nearby. At the same time, he also knew the locations of some of the weaker vampires that were suitable for Emma to practice on. Emosher made a simple 3D map and marked the locations of the vampires on it. Then he passed the map to Emma. "Be careful," Emosher said. Emma nodded. "Okay." Then she took her son and rushed to the location of the first vampire. That blood clan member was only at level 4. Although it was a little difficult for Emma to deal with him, with Emma's combat experience, it shouldn't be too dangerous. Moreover, the locations marked on the map that Emosher gave Emma were all within 100 kilometers of the surrounding area. If Emma really encountered any danger, Emosher would be able to rush over in a flash. After Emma left, Emosher rushed to the locations of the other level 9 evolved vampires. In theory, the Blood Wolf planet was basically all level 10 evolved vampires. But it wasn't like there weren't any evolved vampires below level 10. After all, it was impossible for every vampire to start at level 10. They also grew up step by step from level 1 evolved vampires. It was just that their growth cycle was much shorter than that of humans. Basically, a level 1 evolved vampire could grow into a level 10 evolved vampire in a short year. So it felt like this planet was full of level 10 evolved vampires. With Emosher's current strength, it wasn't too difficult to deal with a level 10 evolved vampire. However, it was too much of a waste of time to deal with a level 10 evolved blood tribe. Moreover, the amount of giant dragon blood he could obtain was only slightly more than that of a level 8 evolved blood tribe. Comparatively speaking, it was much easier to hunt level 9 evolved blood breeds at this stage. Not long after, Emosher arrived near a level 9 evolved vampire. It had been a long time since the blood breeds had sucked in fresh blood. The moment he saw Emosher, his eyes lit up. However, this was also a cautious vampire. He didn't pounce on him directly. Instead, he stretched out a pair of demon wings and a pair of sharp claws. Then he launched a tentative attack on Emosher. However, in front of Emosher's absolute strength, all of this was nothing. Emosher immediately teleported and appeared behind this blood clan member. The sharp claws pierced towards his head. Level 9 blood breeds were much slower than level 10 blood breeds. There was no way to dodge this attack. Emosher's 5 sharp claws pierced through the back of the vampire's head and came out from the front. This level 9 blood breeds died. At the same time, a system notification popped up in Emosher's mind. Frowny face killed a level 9 blood breeds. Obtained 9 drops of giant dragon blood. After killing this level 9 blood breeds, Emosher looked at the sun in the sky. It was still hanging in the east, as if it had never changed its position. Next, Emosher learned the location of the other level 9 blood breeds from the memories of this level 9 blood breeds and hunted them all the way. In the process of hunting these blood breeds, he also encountered many blood breeds with abnormal combat strength. In the entanglement with such blood breeds, Emosher's combat experience and skills were also constantly increasing. In about 20 hours, he had already killed more than 50 blood breeds. Each blood breeds could obtain 9 drops of giant dragon blood. In these 20 hours, he had obtained close to 50,000 drops of giant dragon blood. And as time passed, his speed of killing level 9 blood breeds became faster and faster. According to the time on the Flaming Origin continent, he estimated that he would be able to become a level 9 blood hunter in at most half a month. In fact, he had only used 12 days to become a level 9 blood hunter. Emosher's heart did not waver in the slightest. He continued to hunt blood breeds. But his target had become a level 10 blood breeds. After being promoted to a level 9 hunter, although he still couldn't kill a level 10 evolved vampire without using energy, it was still easy for him to kill a level 10 evolved vampire within 10 moves. And on the Blood Wolf Star, level 10 blood breeds were much more than any other level of blood breeds. So Emosher's speed of obtaining giant dragon blood would be much faster. In another half a month, Emosher had already killed almost all the blood breeds within a radius of 1,000 kilometers. At the same time, Emma had been hunting level 4 to level 5 blood breeds according to the accurate information provided by Emosher. In the past month, she had continuously absorbed the blood of these blood breeds and leveled up by 2 levels. Her next goal was to become a level 6 blood breeds. At the same time, about 200 kilometers away from Emosher, in Tianlin City, almost all the trainees from the Flaming Origin continent would stop at this city after coming to the Blood Wolf Star. And in the eyes of the natives of the Blood Wolf Star, these people were godlike existences. So this city was called Tianlin City. During this period of time, when the level 10 blood hunters of Tianlin City went to the forests and wilderness outside the city to train, they did not see a single level 9 or level 10 blood breeds. All they saw were the corpses of level 9 and level 10 blood breeds. It was not just 1 or 2 corpses, but countless corpses of blood breeds. In a restaurant, more than a dozen level 10 blood hunters were drinking alone. Damn, this is really F***ket up. I spent 500,000 to train, but I didn't even see a single level 10 blood breeds alive. Yeah, it's really weird. It's not just us. According to other people, they didn't even see a level 10 blood breeds alive. Not even a level 9 one. All we saw were the corpses of these blood breeds. Could it be that there are desolate master experts deliberately causing trouble? What are you thinking? In the eyes of blood hunters, level 10 blood hunters like us are nothing. Why would they come here to play such tricks? While they were talking, there was a commotion downstairs. The people from the Skygold sect are here. It's Buffon. It really is Buffon. Following the commotion, there were sounds of footsteps. A few people walked up the stairs. The person in the lead did not have the masculine aura of a man, but he had the feminine beauty of a woman. It was Buffon from the Skygold sect. Chapter 382. The level 10 hunters were discussing when they saw Buffon from the Skygold sect walk up the stairs. Behind him, there were more than a dozen level 10 scavengers. After Buffon sat down, the dozen or so people opened their mouths to speak. Senior Brother this is really strange. The Skygold sect has always been rewarding the good and punishing the evil. It's the publicly recognized #1 sect in the 16 prefectures of Serene Cloud and the Light of Righteousness. You must uphold justice for us. According to the time in the Flaming Beginning continent, we have been here for 27 days. In another 3 days, the sky will be dark. After dark, the blood breeds will appear in large numbers. It's not suitable for training. We can only go back. The next day, we will spend 500,000 to buy a ticket to enter. Our money wasn't scraped by the gang. That's right, Senior Brother We don't know which mysterious expert killed all the level 9 and level 10 evolved blood breeds. This way, we won't be able to train. Our words don't carry much weight. Even if we meet that mysterious expert, we won't dare to say anything. I'm afraid only Senior Brother E and the Sky Gold sect can suppress him. That was indeed the case. In their opinion, someone who could kill so many level 9 and level 10 evolved blood breeds in such a short time without using any energy must be a desolate hunter. How would they dare to argue with a desolate hunter? Only Ebufon, who had the backing of the Celestial Gold sect, could go head-to-head with that desolate hunter. When Ebufon heard these people's flattery, he also felt very comfortable in his heart. A feminine smile appeared on his face as he said, "Please don't worry. Don't worry, everyone. The Sky Gold sect has always been kind. Since this matter happened here, and I just so happened to come across it, I naturally won't just stand by and watch everyone come here for nothing. I've already sent people to investigate. I believe there will be results soon." Hearing this, everyone hurriedly expressed their thanks. I've heard that everyone in the Sky Gold sect is kind and charitable. Now that I see it, it's true. Isn't it obvious? Senior Brother E is the personal disciple of the Sky Gold sect's first elder. Not only is he powerful, but his character is also excellent. That's great. With Senior Brother E from the Sky Gold sect, let's wait for the good news. When Ebufon returned to the inn he was staying at, he contacted the few martial brothers he had previously sent out. "Senior Brother Zhang, did you find anything?" The other side responded, "No." "Junior Brother Li, did you find anything?" "Junior Brother Wang, how's the situation on your side?" "I didn't find anything." Hearing this, Ebufon frowned slightly. He was not like the elite disciples of other sects, who would bring a few desolate hunters with them when they went out for training. In his opinion, if he were to bring a powerful elder to train, he would not be able to force out his potential when he encountered danger. Only trash disciples would bring along powerful elders when they came out to gain experience. Therefore, no matter where he went to train, he would at most bring a few peers with similar strength. But this time, it seemed to be a little troublesome. Although he could use his status as a disciple of the Heavenly Gold sect to suppress the mysterious desolate hunter, he could not do so. However, if that mysterious desolate hunter didn't show up, it wouldn't matter how high his status was. Just as he was thinking of a solution, one of his junior brothers replied, "Senior Brother E, I found a person. To be exact, it's 2 people." Ebufon asked, "Are you sure it's them?" That junior brother replied, "It doesn't seem like it. Because she only hunted level 6 evolved blood clan members. She doesn't seem to have anything to do with the mysterious expert who hunted level 9 and level 10 evolved blood clan members." Oh my god, this woman is... When Ebufon saw that this person was speaking incoherently, he said impatiently, "Send me her video." Soon, the video was sent over. Ebufon opened the video. In the video, a woman with a hot figure was fighting with a blood clan member. From the shape of her face and figure, this was the woman with a boy that he saw in the hall of Hunting Island number 10. But what surprised him was that this woman had a pair of blood-red devil wings on her back. Her eyes were blood-red, and there were 4 sharp teeth in her mouth. Blood clan. He did not expect this woman to be a blood clan member. He looked at this woman and then at the boy who was standing there with a blank face. He was even more puzzled in his heart. This woman was a blood clan member, but she didn't suck the boy's blood? In his opinion, the blood clan was naturally inhumane. Blood was indispensable to the blood clan. Once their blood addiction kicked in, they would not let go even if it was their own son. But this woman was very special. No matter where she went, she always brought this boy with her. Yet, she didn't seem to have the intention to suck the boy's blood. Ebufon continued watching in amazement. At this time, in the video, the woman had already subdued the blood clan member. She then laid on the blood clan member's body and sucked his blood. Ebufon was surprised and said to that junior brother, "Bring that boy back to me." The junior brother asked, "How should we deal with this female blood clan member?" Ebufon said, "Don't pay attention to her for now. We'll take her back to the sect to study after we've dealt with that mysterious expert. This female blood clan member is so peculiar. She should be hiding some unknown secrets." "Understood," that junior brother replied. Fan added. At the same time, don't forget to pay attention to the clues of that mysterious expert. You must find a way to find him. Yes, senior brother E. That junior brother did not defy Fan's words at all. At the same time at the scene, that Sky Gold sect disciple walked out of his hiding place. Looking at the hot figure of Emma, he felt regretful. It was a pity that such a sexy woman was a Blood Clan member. After Emma sucked the Blood Clan member's blood dry, she turned around. He had a half smile on his face and said, "What a sexy woman. What a sexy woman. What a pity." He shook his head regretfully. Emma had already used her telekinesis to detect this person's presence. But her opponent was not weak, so she could not afford to be distracted. When she saw the man, she subconsciously leaped to her son's side. The Sky Gold sect disciple smiled and said, "Indeed, beautiful women are not stupid. I'm here for your son." Emma frowned when she heard this. A pair of demon wings that were more than 6 meters wide extended from her back. Her 4 sharp fangs seemed to be even sharper. The Sky Gold sect disciple shook his head. "You're already considered very strong among the level 5 evolved Blood Clan members. But no matter how strong you are, you're still only a level 5 evolved Blood Clan member. You're just a little sister in front of a level 10 scavenger." As he spoke, he stomped on the ground. He instantly jumped forward. Chapter 383. The Sky Gold sect disciple's tone was a little regretful, but also a little cruel. "You may be strong, but unfortunately, in front of absolute power, you're just a little girl." As he spoke, he stomped on the ground with his right foot and instantly attacked Emma. His speed was so fast that Emma could not dodge at all. His strength was so strong that Emma could not dodge at all. Seeing that he was already in front of Emma, the Sky Gold sect disciple's right hand formed a claw and directly grabbed at Emma's chest. However, just as his claw was about to grab Emma, another hand suddenly reached out. It caught his right hand in an instant. He was slightly shocked and hurriedly tried to use all his strength. However, it was too late. Crack! The sound of a withered branch being broken could be heard. His right hand was bent 180 degrees in the opposite direction. A scream came out of that person's mouth. As he screamed, he felt Emosher's aura. He was just a level 9 hunter. He was inexplicably shocked. How could a mere LV9 hunter have such a strong combat power? This was not scientific. He didn't know that even if Emosher didn't use energy, he could still easily defeat a level 10 hunter. In shock, he turned to look at Emosher. When he saw the undisguised murderous intent in Emosher's eyes, he was suddenly shocked. Although this was only a level 9 hunter, he didn't have any power to fight back. He could feel that if this level 9 hunter really wanted to kill him, he really had no chance of surviving. In shock, his scream turned into a threat. "You can't kill me. I'm a disciple of the Sky Gold sect. Senior brother Fan of the Sky Gold sect sent me." Bang! Before he finished speaking, a heavy punch had already landed on his head. His head instantly exploded into a cloud of blood. At the same time, the system's voice sounded in Emosher's mind. "Killed level 10 hunter. Received 10 drops of Titan Dragon blood." If someone else saw a level 9 hunter kill a level 10 hunter in seconds without using energy, there would definitely be a huge wave in their heart. However, Emma's heart wasn't stirred at all. To Emosher, killing an opponent who was 2 levels higher than him was not even a warm-up. Naturally, there was nothing to be surprised about. Emosher had already plundered that guy's memories. From that guy's memories, he knew that the guy wasn't after Emma, but Emma's son. Furthermore, he had received instructions from Fan, the personal disciple of the Sky Gold sect's great elder. As for why Fan wanted to capture a defenseless boy, that person did not know. It seemed that only by obtaining Fan's memories in the future would he be able to understand all of this. But no matter what, since he dared to make a move on his people, he had chosen death. But for now, Emosher didn't want to waste time looking for them. He was waiting for that brat to deliver himself to him. According to the information he had obtained from this Sky Gold sect disciple, Fan was also looking for this mysterious powerhouse, in an attempt to use the power of the Sky Gold sect to make this mysterious powerhouse retreat. Thinking of this, Emosher coldly snorted in his heart. Heavenly Gold sect? Let's give it a try then. Next, Emosher gave Emma a few level 6 Blood Clan locations and asked her to hunt these level 6 Blood Clan members. Then, he destroyed the corpse and continued to hunt the level 10 Blood Clan members. More than 2 hours later, in a luxurious inn in Tianlin God City, Ibu Fan looked at the time. It had been more than 2 hours. Logically speaking, that Junior should have brought the boy back long ago. But until now, there had been no news at all. Helplessly, he could only contact that Junior. But when he dialed that Junior's number, he couldn't reach him no matter how hard he tried. He knew that something was wrong and immediately sent people to look for that Junior. But even after 5 hours, there were still no clues. Ibu Fan knew that it was over. That Junior was a level 10 hunter. If he encountered a level 10 Blood Clan member, even if he couldn't defeat them, he could still escape. Now that there was no news, it was very likely that he had encountered that mysterious powerhouse. Did that Junior not reveal his identity to that mysterious powerhouse? Or did that mysterious powerhouse still kill him even though he knew that he was a disciple of the Sky Gold sect? In the end, he denied the latter. The Sky Gold sect was overseen by a grand desolate master. Even the other major forces and sects on the continent wouldn't easily provoke a force with a grand desolate master. After all, a grand desolate master's combat power was extremely terrifying. If he was really ruthless, even those major forces would have to be wary. It seemed that the junior brother had been killed before he could reveal his identity. Thinking of this, he immediately sent a message to all the nearby disciples of the Sky Gold sect. All disciples of the Sky Gold sect wear the Sky Gold sect uniform. If you encounter the mysterious powerhouse, reveal your identity immediately. When all the disciples of the Sky Gold sect saw this message, they understood the seriousness of the matter. They immediately changed into the Heavenly Gold sect disciples' uniform. They were all dressed in black. On their left chest, there was a small golden word embroidered, Sky Gold. Ibu Fan wanted to remind these disciples. It was because the sky would turn dark in another 50 hours. On the Blood Wolf star, it was extremely dangerous outside the city after dark, and that mysterious powerhouse might very well return to Tianlin City. But in fact, Emosher didn't plan to go to Tianlin City. He didn't plan to go to any city either. 2 days later, the sun finally sank below the horizon. Night gradually enveloped the land. At this moment, Emosher detected that within a 200-kilometer radius, a small blood tribe had started to appear. This blood tribe wasn't big, with only 50 evolved blood tribe members. Among them, 35 evolved blood tribe members had reached level 10. When Emosher saw this, he was secretly delighted. A group of blood tribe members had finally appeared. He teleported over first and brought Emma along with him. Then he flew towards the blood tribe. Soon, the blood tribe members discovered Emosher and the rest. More than 50 blood tribe members pounced towards Emosher and the rest. Just like before, Emosher erected a dragon psychic barrier around them. These blood tribe members couldn't break through his barrier at all. Then he let in 10 blood tribe members. He dealt with the evolved blood tribe members above level 6, while Emma dealt with the evolved blood tribe members below level 6. In less than half a minute, the 10 blood tribe members were killed. Then, Emosher let in another batch of blood tribe members. After killing 2 batches of blood tribe members consecutively, the rest of the blood tribe members realized that this human was not to be trifled with. They started to turn around and flee. Emosher naturally wouldn't give them the chance to escape. Using teleportation, he easily killed them one by one. Chapter 384. It only took Emosher and Emma 5 minutes to easily finish off this vampire. They obtained more than 500 drops of Titan dragon blood. Then he detected a group of vampires in the forest in the southeast. There were about 80 vampires in this group. Among them, 60 were level 10 evolved vampires. After another 15 minutes, they exterminated this group of vampires. They continued to search for the next vampire. If other hunters who were here for training saw Emosher, a level 9 hunter, being so brutal, they would not know what to think. While Emosher was killing the Blood Clan members, Yi Zichen and the others were still alive. Most of the trainees in Tianlin City had already left and teleported back to Hunting Island number 10. In their opinion, the Blood Wolf Star's night was not suitable for them to train. However, some of them stayed behind. For example, those from the Skygold sect. There were a total of 15 of them this time. They were led by Ibufan. Ibufan was not a good-for-nothing like those so-called geniuses in novels. He was only one step away from becoming a desolate hunter. Only when faced with an absolutely dangerous situation would he be able to grasp this opportunity. Therefore, not long after the sky darkened, he left Tianlin City with his 13 senior brothers. When they encountered a large group of vampires, they would temporarily avoid them. When they encountered a small group of vampires, they would fight them. The combat power of the 14 of them was not to be underestimated. Even if a real desolate hunter encountered them, he would not be able to take them down in a short time. Therefore, they were able to kill this small group of vampires very quickly. However, what made them feel strange was that, according to their previous intelligence, there were many small groups of vampires in the wilderness at night. However, they had already been out for more than 2 hours and had only encountered 2 small groups of vampires. Could it be that the intelligence was wrong? Just as they were wondering, a psychic master made a discovery. He led these disciples of the Skygold sect to a forest. Although it was nighttime and there was no moonlight, their eyesight was very good. However, their eyesight was far beyond that of ordinary people, and they could see things even at night. At this moment, everyone was very surprised by the scene in front of them. There were about 50 bodies of vampires in the forest. Moreover, most of the Blood Clan members had their heads blown off. After a few experienced disciples investigated the scene, they analyzed some things. Blood breeds below level 6 basically have their heads blown off. The blood breeds of level 6 and below were all killed by the sharp claws, and the angle, depth and location of the wounds were basically the same. It's very likely that 2 people did it. When the other disciples heard this, they were all shocked. 2 people? Are you sure? There are so many of us, but we still have to be careful when dealing with a group of 20 to 30 vampires. The 2 of them were able to kill so many members of the Blood Clan, and most of them are leveled 10 blood breeds. Ibufan frowned slightly and muttered, "If there are really 2 people, then one of them must be the mysterious expert." As he spoke, his gaze fell on the corpses of the Blood Clan members whose heads had been blown off. The others nodded in agreement. Senior brother E is right. It must be a mysterious expert. I thought that the mysterious expert would return to Sky's Descent City at night, but it seems like he didn't. Ibufan said, "Everyone be careful. If you encounter the mysterious expert, identify yourself immediately." The others nodded in agreement. However, they were not as fast as Emosher, and when they tried to use their telekinesis to investigate, they would be blocked by Emosher's dragon consciousness. Naturally, they could not find Emosher's location. After a total of 72 hours, they still did not have any clues. Emosher, on the other hand, had killed many members of the Blood Clan in these 72 hours. To put it simply, in just 72 hours, the number of members of the Blood Clan that he had killed was more than the number of members of the Blood Clan that Bai had killed previously. Finally, after about 240 hours, which was less than 10 Earth days, Emosher had devoured enough members of the Titan Dragon Blood Clan, and his body finally felt like it was about to break through at any time. He couldn't be more familiar with this feeling. He brought Emma and entered his micro-world directly. Although it would only take him 5 minutes to break through. This world was filled with members of the Blood Clan. Although he could still fight while breaking through, he would be distracted after all. Therefore, he chose a safer method. After entering the micro-world, Emosher said to Emma, "Rest here for a few minutes, I'll break through." Emma was speechless. "Listen, is this something a human would say? Rest here for a few minutes, I'll break through." Other people had to die trying to break through. It could be as short as a few days, or as long as a few months or even a few years. You can break through in a few minutes. How are you going to let others live? However, Emma did not dwell on this at this moment. Instead, she curiously sized up this place. There was a lake. There was a bamboo forest. There were dozens of bamboo houses. Blue sky and clear water, birds chirping and flowers blooming. In the words of the Huaxia people, this was a paradise. She thought that Emo sure would bring her to hide in the dragon cave. She did not expect to come to this place. What is this place? Why haven't I heard Boss mention it before? She used her telekinesis to explore the surroundings and was quickly attracted by the beautiful scenery here. She could not help but stroke her son's head. If she really could not find a way to cure her son, then living here in seclusion with her son was not a bad ending. She walked slowly on the grass beside the lake with her son. When her son saw the green grass here, he also began to play happily. He kept shouting and running. She followed behind and carefully took care of her son. It seemed that her son also liked this place. Just as she was thinking of this, the door of the bamboo house not far away opened. Emo sure walked out slowly. At this moment, Emo sure's aura had not yet been restrained. It was obvious that he had just broken through. Emma was a little speechless. He really broke through in a few minutes. If other people knew about this, they would probably drag Emo sure away for dissection and research. After breaking through to level 10, Emo sure only felt that his whole body was full of power. Now, 80% of the blood in his body had been replaced by dragon blood. He could clearly feel that when he became a desolate hunter, he would be able to truly transform into a dragon. This made him look forward to becoming a desolate hunter. Let's go and hunt vampires again, Emo sure said. Emma looked at this place and was slightly reluctant to leave. Emo sure also noticed Emma's thoughts and said, "Don't worry, if you like it here, I will bring you here often in the future." Hearing this, Emma quickly thanked him. "Thank you, boss." Chapter 385. Emo sure had planned to leave with Emma, but he saw that Emma seemed reluctant to leave this place. He asked, "Do you want to go out and fight monsters to level up, or stay here with your son? It's up to you." Emma thought for a while, then replied, "Boss, I'll stay here with my son." Although she did want to become stronger, it was nighttime outside, and powerful blood breeds had appeared in groups. It was really inconvenient for her to bring her son along. Emo sure nodded. "Yes, I was too careless. When we go back this time, go to the 5th hunting ground to train. That's the most suitable place for you." "Thank you, boss," Emma quickly said. Emo sure shook his head and pointed to the bamboo houses for storage. "There's no danger here, you and your son can stay here without worry. There's a lot of food in these houses, enough for you and your son to use for a month. After a month we'll go back." "Got it." Emo sure left Emma and her son here and left the miniature world. It was still nighttime outside. But at this time, there were 2 half-moons slowly rising in the sky. One of the 2 moons was golden, and the other was blood red. And they were both terrifyingly big. The 2 moons took up half of the sky. Although it was nighttime, with the 2 bright moons, even an ordinary person could easily see the situation within 100 meters of them. Under the yellow and red moonlight, there were ghostly shadows in the wilderness. In groups of 3 to 5, 4 to 6. Some even gathered in groups of hundreds. Emo sure used his dragon's will to investigate, and found that these were all level 10 evolved blood breeds. There was an abandoned village more than 50 kilometers away from him. This was originally a human village, but the people in this city were all infected by the blood breed virus and turned into blood breeds. Although this village was not big, there were more than 1,000 blood breeds. Among them, there were more than 800 level 10 evolved blood breeds. With a single thought, Emo sure arrived at the center of the village in a single step. When the surrounding blood breeds saw the sudden appearance of this human, they all pounced on Emo sure. Emo sure raised his fist. Bang! The head of a level 10 evolved blood clan member instantly exploded. He kicked. Bang! The head of the other level 10 evolved blood clan member also exploded. Now that he had been promoted to a level 10 hunter, Emo sure's speed and strength had made great progress compared to before. Against these level 10 evolved blood breeds, it would be an instant kill. Sometimes, he could even wipe out a large group of vampires with a single kick. Under the moonlight, blood and severed limbs splattered everywhere. Not long after, the ground was littered with broken limbs and bodies. Fresh blood had already dyed the ground red. From afar, the ground seemed to be covered with a layer of red carpet. At the same time, Emosher's mind was flooded with messages. Killed a level 10 evolved blood breed. Received 10 drops of Titan dragon blood. Killed a level 10 evolved blood breed. Received 10 drops of Titan dragon blood. Killed a level 7 evolved blood breed. Obtained 7 drops of Titan dragon blood. In just 5 minutes, Emosher had killed over 100 blood breeds. When the blood breeds reached the level of blood breeds, their intelligence was comparable to that of normal humans. They had never seen such a powerful human before. Was he still a human? Although they were extremely thirsty for blood, they had not lost their minds. So when they saw how brutal this human was, they all turned around and fled. However, before they could run 50 meters, they suddenly crashed into an invisible wall. In front of them, there seemed to be nothing, but no matter how hard they tried, they could not break through the invisible barrier in front of them. It turned out that Emosher had already used the dragon psychic barrier to encircle the surroundings. However, the dragon's psychic barrier in the past was to protect himself. This time, the dragon's psychic barrier was to prevent these blood breeds from escaping. After encircling these 1,000-odd blood breeds, Emosher ordered them to constantly teleport and catch up with these panic-stricken blood breeds. He began to massacre them. In the distance, another small group of blood breeds had just come to seek refuge with this group of blood breeds. After seeing such a brutal scene, each of them widened their eyes. In their eyes, humans had always been weak, insignificant, and lowly. Even those who claimed to be heavenly gods were much stronger than ordinary humans. But in front of the blood breeds, they were just weaklings. It could be said that the blood breeds were almost invincible on this planet, except for another mysterious creature. But now, this human was so brutal. Are you still a human? Helpless, this small group of blood breeds could only silently retreat. However, when they turned around to escape, they realized that they could no longer escape. It turned out that Emosher had already discovered them and had once again formed the dragon psychic barrier around them. As a result, Emosher continued to kill vampires and expand the area he could kill. Thus, within the range of his dragon psychic barrier, the blood breeds became a forbidden zone of death. And this forbidden zone of death continued to expand. In the beginning, the radius was only 1,000 meters. Then it expanded to 2,000 meters, 5,000 meters, and 10,000 meters. After more than 20 hours, this forbidden zone of death had already reached 100 kilometers. The entire forbidden zone of death was filled with the smell of blood. And this smell of blood was carried by the wind, attracting even more blood breeds. After these blood breeds were killed by Emosher, more and more blood breeds were attracted. This formed a terrifying cycle of death. Slowly, in this forbidden zone of death, more and more blood breeds died. This place slowly condensed into a cloud of blood mist. The range of the blood mist continued to expand. After another 5 hours, the range of the blood mist had already shrouded a radius of 100 kilometers. At the same time, Ibufan and his 13 senior and junior brothers were resting on top of a mountain after killing another wave of blood breeds. Other than 2 who were on guard, the rest of them were either eating dry food or drinking water. Gulp, gulp. After a disciple gulped down a few mouthfuls of water, he panted a few times and said, "I've long heard that the nights on the Blood Wolf planet are not easy, and it's true." Another disciple stuffed some dry food into his mouth and said vaguely, "It's not just not easy. This isn't just bad, this isn't hell mode at all. Fortunately, we were well prepared. Otherwise, I'm afraid that even if we didn't die, we'd be injured. Signory, when can we go back? There are too many level 10 evolved blood breeds here, we can't handle it." Ibufan shook his head. "Since we came out to train, wouldn't it be too cowardly to retreat from such a small danger?" Hearing this, the rest of the fellow disciples shook their heads secretly. although everyone had some complaints about Ibufon's actions in their hearts. But on the surface, no one said anything. Chapter 386. The disciples of the Heavenly Gold sect were slightly unhappy with Ibufon. But no one said anything. Firstly, they didn't dare to. He was the personal disciple of the Grand Elder. They couldn't afford to offend him. Secondly, Ibufon was ruthless to others and even more ruthless to himself. So even if they wanted to say something, they couldn't say it. But at this moment, a level 10 psychic master suddenly said, "Senior brother E, there's a blood fog in the west. It's spreading towards us." Everyone was slightly taken aback when they heard this. According to the previous information, there wasn't any blood fog here. Ibufon did not panic. Instead, he asked, "Is this blood fog poisonous?" The psychic master checked for a moment and said, "No, it's poisonous. It's just a blood fog formed from the thick smell of blood." Ibufon said, "Try to expand the range of your detection." The psychic master shook his head. "I've already tried to check, but there seems to be an even stronger psychic master blocking my detection. I can only detect a blurry area in the center of the blood fog. But I found that many blood breeds entered there and never came out." Ibufon stroked a strand of hair in front of his chest and pondered for a moment. He said, "Let's go and take a look." Everyone, this was too careless. They had to go and take a look before they could figure out the situation inside. If there were any powerful creatures inside, wouldn't they be courting death? But they also understood Ibufon's thoughts. These people were basically level 10 psychic masters or level 10 hunters. They desperately wanted to break through. They were only one opportunity away from breaking through. If there wasn't any danger inside, it would naturally be good. But if there was danger inside, it might be an opportunity for them to break through. As long as they grasped this opportunity, there would be a breakthrough in minutes. Although there was only a small difference between a level 10 hunter and a level 1 hunter, there was still a huge gap between them. But in terms of realms, they were two completely different realms. Before breaking through, even the most powerful level 10 hunters could only barely be considered strong. And only after becoming a level 1 hunter could one be considered a true expert of the flaming origin continent. Thinking of this, these people did not have any complaints. With the Great Psyche Master scouting ahead, the rest of them protected the Great Psyche Master in the center. Then, they cautiously looked around as they entered the blood-red fog. At first, there was nothing special about the mist other than the thick smell of blood. But after walking for more than 20 kilometers, they found a village. They all walked towards the village. Only when they got closer did they discover that there were almost 2,000 corpses lying haphazardly in the village. Furthermore, these corpses clearly didn't belong to humans but to vampires. After a careful examination by a junior brother, they discovered that most of the corpses were level 10 evolved blood breeds. Furthermore, all of the vampires had their heads blown off in a single blow, and no energy had been used. Furthermore, all the members of the blood clan were killed by the same person. Hearing this report, almost everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. Hiss, 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 this is that mysterious expert? This is too powerful. Previously, during the day, we thought that the reason he dared to roam the wilderness was because there were fewer vampires during the day. At night, he would return to the city. Now, it seems that we are too inexperienced. To be able to kill so many evolved vampires single-handedly in the wilderness, I'm afraid this person's ability is not a simple level 1 desolate hunter. He is a level 9 or even level 10 desolate hunter. You're right. Only those who have reached that level of strength can come and go as they please among so many evolved vampires. But why would such a powerful existence come to the 10th hunting ground? With his ability, coming here is just a waste of time. Ibufon pondered for a long time, frowned slightly, and reminded everyone. In short, if you meet this person, don't provoke him. But we don't have to be too scared. Although he's strong, we're not the only ones here. Behind us are the entire Skygold sect, Skywood sect, Skyfire sect, Skywater sect, and Skyearth sect. No matter how strong he is, we don't have to be afraid of him. Only then did everyone react. They all nodded. That's right. In the 16 prefectures of the serene cloud, no one dares to provoke the Sky Gold sect. Not just the 16 prefectures of the serene cloud, but even in the entire continent, the 16 prefectures of the serene cloud are ranked highly. How can he fight us head-on? With that said, everyone was temporarily relieved. They continued to search deeper. The deeper they went, the more broken limbs and body parts they saw. The deeper they went, the more damp the ground became. However, this dampness was not due to the dew, but because the grass had long been dyed red by blood. Amidst their exclamations, they walked for another 50 kilometers. Finally, someone used the night vision device to discover something. Senior brother Jeet. Everyone immediately looked at the monitor. On the green screen, a man was surrounded by hundreds of vampires. No, to be exact, he was chasing after the hundreds of vampires. One punch for a child, one kick for a child. One kick for a child. In no time, he killed almost half of the vampires. At this moment, he had no intention of stopping. He continued to kill the vampires. This was the first time the Sky Gold sect disciples saw this person. However, he was too far away and there was a blood mist. Their night vision goggles weren't able to see very clearly. They could only see the outline of a vampire's. Let's go and take a look, Ibufan said. The rest hesitated for a moment, but could only follow Ibufan and walk forward. Emosure had already used his dragon consciousness to detect people slowly approaching. However, there was a level 10 psychic master among them. This psychic master had been using his psychic power to envelop this group of people. Emosure wanted to use his dragon consciousness to investigate, but could only vaguely detect the outlines of these people. He could not see their faces clearly at all. However, Emosure had no intention of hiding. He continued to kill the evolved vampires. Soon, those people were only 10 kilometers away from Emosure. Emosure purposely opened the barrier to allow them to enter unobstructed. At this moment, Ibufan raised his hand and cupped his fist. He said loudly, Ibufan, the personal disciple of the Sky Gold sect's great elder, has something to say to you. Would you do me the honor? However, Emosure ignored him. He continued to kill the evolved vampires. Chapter 387. When Emosure heard that they were disciples of the Sky Gold sect, he ignored them. However, he snorted in his heart. He was waiting for them. Ibufan of the Sky Gold sect. Emosure did not have a good impression of him from the first time he met him. Later on, he even wanted to kidnap Emma's son. When he had this thought, he had already decided his fate: death. However, Emosure did not want to waste time looking for him. He also knew that this guy would find him sooner or later. Therefore, part of the reason he made such a big commotion was to lure these guys over. Seeing that Emosure did not respond, Ibufan of the Sky Gold sect spoke again in a clear voice. We saw that you were hunting the Blood Clan here and were very curious, so we wanted to come over and have a chat with you. My 11 seniors and I are rushing over slowly. Please don't misunderstand. Emosure still didn't pay any attention to him and continued to hunt the vampires. According to his estimation, with his current speed, even if he didn't become a desolate hunter in a month, he would be able to do so. Hence, he had to make the best use of his time to hunt the Blood Clan. Soon, Ibufan and the others were only 10 meters away from Emosure. It was only then that they saw Emosure's appearance clearly. When they saw Emosure's appearance, they were all stunned. It's him? It's him. How is this possible? This doesn't make sense. Ibufan was also stunned. He had seen this person in the hull of Hunting Island number 10. According to the information he had received, this person was only a level 8 desolate hunter. Now, when he was hunting the Blood Clan on Hunting Island, his aura was that of a level 10 desolate hunter. However, even if he was a level 10 desolate hunter, the combat power that he displayed was too strong. However, Ibufan was a disciple of a large sect and had seen it before. Although he was very surprised in his heart, he quickly concealed this surprise very well. After all, his master had once said that those who achieved great things would remain calm even if a mountain collapsed in front of them. Furthermore, he had sent people to capture this person and the child that the woman had brought. He could not let this person know about this. If he knew about this, it would be difficult to solve many problems in the future. On the surface, he looked even more calm. He then said to Emoshur, "Since you are so powerful, why are you wasting your time in the 10th hunting ground?" Emoshur smashed the head of a level 10 evolved blood clan with a punch, and conveniently snatched Ibufon's memories. When these people saw Emoshur's strength, their hearts jumped. This power was simply inhuman. When Ibufon saw Emoshur explode the head of a level 10 evolved vampire with a single punch, his heart couldn't help but skip a beat. This person's physical strength alone was already so terrifying. It was truly a rare sight. However, with the backing of the Heavenly Gold sect, his expression remained unchanged. He continued to speak to Emoshur. "Sir, you killed too many blood breeds during the day, so much so that everyone who came to train this time returned empty-handed. I wonder why?" Emoshur was currently flipping through Ibufon's memories. He finally understood why Ibufon wanted to capture Emma's son. Although Ibufon was an orthodox disciple of the Heavenly Gold sect on the surface, he was actually secretly cultivating an evil technique. If he succeeded in cultivating this evil technique, his strength would increase to infinitely close to the Grand Desolate Master Realm. However, this evil technique required the flesh and blood of a child who had never cultivated it. In the Flaming Dawn continent, there were very few people who had never cultivated it. Therefore, when he saw Emma's son, he revealed such a lustful gaze. When Ibufon saw that Emoshur didn't respond, he guessed that Emoshur must be wary of his background, so he didn't dare to make a move for now. He secretly heaved a sigh of relief. It seemed that the name Heavenly Gold Sect was indeed useful. Even a monster like this guy in front of him would have to think twice when he heard the name Heavenly Gold Sect. When he thought of this, his tone became much harsher. "Sir, you are indeed powerful. However, with such power, why are you harming others without benefiting yourself instead of doing something that benefits the people?" When Emoshur heard this, he snorted coldly. "You are upholding justice on the surface, but secretly catching children to cultivate your evil technique. Is this beneficial to the people? You speak of benevolence, righteousness, and morality, but you are full of thieves and prostitutes. You have the cheek to point fingers here?" When he said this, Ibufon was shocked. No one knew that he had secretly cultivated an evil technique other than himself and his master. How did this guy know? Then he glanced at his senior and junior brothers. Sure enough, the way they looked at him was a little strange. When he turned back and looked at Emoshur, his eyes were filled with killing intent. Although he didn't know how this kid knew, since he already knew, he had to get rid of him. When he thought of this, he snorted coldly. "Nonsense. Fellow disciples, since this person is so arrogant and incurable, we don't need to be entangled with him anymore. Let him live and die on his own." With that, he waved his hand and turned to leave. The others also left one after another. However, just as he turned around, he suddenly turned back. He threw a grenade-shaped object in his hand at Emoshur. Originally, with the speed of this object, Emoshur could easily dodge it. However, there was a wormhole teleportation device on this object. Just as he threw it, it disappeared. The next moment, it appeared beside Emoshur. Boom! Fiery light appeared and instantly filled the space between heaven and earth. The loud roar continuously bombarded everyone's eardrums. Violent shock waves spread out in all directions. All the Heavenly Gold Sect disciples activated their energy shields immediately. Even so, their bodies were still blasted forward by the shockwave. He flew for several hundred meters before coming to a stop. Everyone's energy shields had been shattered, and the clothes on their backs had disappeared. This showed how powerful the shockwaves were. Seeing this, Ibufon finally heaved a sigh of relief. He knew that this guy was very strong. If he could kill a level 10 evolved blood clan member with his bare hands, how could he be weak? However, this guy knew his secret, so he had to destroy him. Hence, he used the strongest trump card his master had given him, the wormhole bomb. The wormhole bomb was an extremely rare weapon in the Flaming Origin continent. Anyone below the level of a Grand Desolate Master would be blown to pieces if they were hit. This was the strongest trump card his master had given him when he left the sect. Although it was a bit of a waste to use it on this kid, as long as he could kill him, everything would be worth it. Thinking of this, he sneered in his heart. From the moment you decided to become enemies with me, Ibufan, your fate has already been decided. When the strong light and the roar disappeared, he turned to look at where Emoshur was. Chapter 388. When the bright light disappeared, the rumbling stopped. Ibufan looked at the place where Emoshur had been standing. Although he knew that this kid would be blasted to pieces by the micro-wormhole explosive bomb. He couldn't see anything. But after the explosion, people would always subconsciously look at the explosion point. However, with that one glance, he was like the 7 fairies who had been immobilized. He stood there in a daze. Other than the shock and fear in his eyes, he couldn't move at all. When the rest of the Heavenly Gold Sect disciples saw the explosion point, they were also immobilized, just like Ibufan. He saw that the kid was standing there untouched at the explosion point. There was no difference from before the explosion. Even his posture didn't change. They were still some distance away from the explosion point, and they had even condensed an energy shield. After the explosion, the clothes on their backs were torn apart by the powerful energy. This kid was at the explosion point, but not only was he not injured, even his clothes were not damaged at all. It had to be known that even if it was a Grand Desolate Master, after enduring such a violent explosion, it was impossible for his clothes to remain undamaged. This was completely beyond the scope of their understanding. Just as they were in shock, Emoshur took a step forward. His figure disappeared. Everyone was shocked again. When Emoshur appeared again, he was already in front of Ibufan. Seeing this, Ibufan condensed an energy shield again and shouted in horror, "No, you can't kill me, I'm a heavenly gold." Bang! Before he could finish, his head was smashed into the ground by Emoshur. Seeing this, the rest of the people turned pale. In their eyes, Ibufan had always been high and mighty. They had to be careful when they spoke in front of Ibufan. But now, Ibufan's head was directly smashed into the ground by this guy. The surrounding soil was stained with blood from the explosion of the head. At the same time, a system notification sounded in Emoshur's mind. Frowny face killed a level 10 scavenger with bare hands. Obtained 10 drops of Titan Dragon blood. Seeing how brutal this guy was, the rest of the people didn't dare to stay any longer. They could only turn around and escape. However, in front of Emoshur, could they escape? Emoshur kept teleporting. Every time he teleported, a guy's head would explode. And in his mind, there would be a notification. Speaking of which, killing these fellows was even easier than killing level 10 evolved blood breeds. After all, human level 10 hunters were much weaker than level 10 evolved vampires. In less than 15 seconds, Emoshur had killed all the Heavenly Gold Sect disciples. Furthermore, all of them were insta-killed with bare hands. It could be seen how strong his combat strength was now. After killing all the disciples of the Heavenly Gold Sect, Emoshur wanted to get some good stuff from them. However, to his disappointment, these people did not have anything good on them other than an explosive bomb. However, the explosive bullets had already been used. Sigh, what bad luck. Emoshur sighed and shook his head. Actually, it wasn't that these people didn't have anything good on them. It was just that Emoshur's standards were now much higher, and ordinary good things could not catch his eye. He used a fire to burn these people's corpses. Emoshur continued to kill the blood breeds as if nothing had happened. Gradually, as time passed, Emoshur had killed almost all the blood breeds within a 1,000-kilometer radius. At the same time, in Tianlin City, the city lord was standing on the city wall. He held a giant sword in his hand and was wearing armor. On the city wall beside him, there were more than 100,000 soldiers. They were all staring into the darkness in the distance. Everyone's nerves were tense. Every time night fell, there would be evolved blood breeds trying to invade the human city. They could only barely defend Tianlin City by relying on the terrain advantage and many powerful weapons. However, this time was very strange. When night fell, not a single blood breed could be seen. More than 10 hours ago, he had already sent people out to scout. However, there was no reply until now. This gave him a bad premonition. Not only him, but everyone else was frowning. The expected situation did not happen. Instead, it was this strange situation that made them feel uneasy. Could this be the legendary calm before the storm? Another half an hour later, several figures finally appeared in the distance. Everyone's heart tightened. However, they soon realized that these figures were not blood breeds, but spies they had sent out. The soldiers quickly welcomed the spies in. How is it? What's the situation? Where did those blood breeds go? The city lord saw that the spies were panting and sweating profusely. He ordered, "Bring water." Immediately, someone brought over a few cups of water. The city lord personally handed them to the spies. The spies did not stand on ceremony. They took the cups and gulped down the water. Only then did they speak. No blood breeds. There was not a single blood breed within a 100-kilometer radius. There were only blood breed corpses. Tens of thousands of blood breed corpses. All the blood breeds have been killed. Hearing this, all the soldiers looked at the spies in disbelief. All the spies nodded their heads in agreement. Yes, after we went out, we only saw piles and piles of blood breed corpses. All the blood breeds were killed in one hit. It seems that some powerful creature killed all the blood breeds. We were still worried, so we walked hundreds of kilometers away. However, we didn't see a single blood breed within hundreds of kilometers. Hearing this, the soldiers were both surprised and delighted. In the past, every night when the blood breeds attacked, they would suffer heavy losses. But this time, some kind of powerful creature had appeared and killed all of the blood breeds. Then, they could avoid death and injury on this night. This was the first time in hundreds of years. However, among these people, there was one person who did not have a trace of joy on his face. That person was the city lord. When he heard that all the blood breeds had been killed, his heart skipped a beat. Oh no, was the werewolves going to appear? In legends, the werewolves and the blood breeds were sworn enemies. However, the werewolves rarely appeared. They only appeared once every 100 years. Every time the werewolves appeared, they would start a racial war with the blood breeds. Humans often became the cannon fodder between these two powerful races. As long as the werewolves and the blood breeds started a large-scale war, the ones who would be injured in the end would definitely be humans. In history, there were several wars between the werewolves and the blood breeds that almost wiped out humans. Chapter 389. There had always been such a legend on the Bloodwolf planet. When there were too many vampires, the werewolves would appear and start a war with the vampires. However, in every war, the ones who suffered the most were the humans. Humans did not have the strong vitality of the vampires. As long as the vampires did not kill them on the spot, they could not kill them. The werewolves were even stronger. Even if they were hit in the head, they could not be killed. The only way to kill them was to find a way to freeze them and reduce their cell activity to the minimum. Then they would shatter them. However, humans had limited abilities. How difficult was it to freeze them? Therefore, humans could only watch as the werewolves and vampires wreaked havoc on the land. There was nothing they could do. Thinking of this, the mayor looked up at the sky. He saw that the golden moon in the sky had dimmed a lot. On the contrary, the blood-red moon was even redder than before. It was frighteningly red. He looked at these warriors and hesitated. Should he tell these warriors? If he did not tell them, it would not make sense. If there was an emergency, they would not be so well prepared. But even if he told them, it would be of no use at all. In front of the powerful werewolves, humans were so weak and could not withstand a single blow. Even if they knew, it would be useless except for more fear. However, after hesitating for 5 minutes, he made up his mind. He gestured for the warriors to quiet down and then pointed at the blood-red moon in the sky that looked like a huge blood-red eye. He said, "The vampires killed this time are most likely werewolves." Everyone was stunned when they heard the word werewolves. Then, everyone felt a chill from the bottom of their hearts. Their fear of werewolves was deeply rooted in their hearts. Thousands of years ago, their ancestors knew that every time werewolves appeared, it would be a huge disaster for humans. In the first half of their lives, many people had experienced such a disaster once. Although 100 years had passed, the destruction and damage caused by the appearance of the werewolves were still fresh in their minds. The thousands of warriors at the scene were all gloomy. After a moment, the mayor spoke again. "Prepare early." Hearing this, everyone went to prepare silently. Their so-called preparation was not to go back and say goodbye to their families. In front of the powerful werewolves, there was basically no need for them to defend the city. They couldn't defend it even if they tried. They could only pray that they survived. Meanwhile, in the wilderness, Emosher continued to hunt down these evolved vampires. He could clearly feel that there were more and more vampires around him. Furthermore, these vampires were no longer as afraid of death as they were in the past. Obviously, there must be some reason behind this that he did not know. However, Emosher didn't want to delve into it. His most important task now was to obtain enough dragon blood to become a desolate hunter. As for everything else, they were all secondary. In the worst-case scenario, even if he really encountered an unsolvable danger, he could still use teleportation to quickly escape. However, he also keenly noticed something. The blood moon in the sky was getting redder. It was so red that it was as if the moon was made entirely out of blood. In order to avoid any accidents, his dragon will was constantly paying attention to all the movements around him. Another 2 hours later, a long and desolate voice suddenly rang out. Oh, it sounded like a wolf's howl. Emosher's heart skipped a beat. He now knew that many legends were actually true. It was just that through word of mouth, these legends had been exaggerated artistically. Therefore, every time he went to a place, he would first understand the legends of the place. He knew that there were legends of werewolves in this world. Not only were there legends, but there were also records of real events from 100 years ago. It seemed that werewolves were about to appear again. According to the previous records, werewolves were stronger than evolved vampires. Although this world's settings only allowed the strongest evolved vampires to reach level 10, which was equivalent to a level 10 desolate hunter. However, among the werewolves, there were many who had reached the peak of level 10 and were only a hair away from breaking through. Their leader, the alpha werewolf, had already broken through to a level 1 mutant werewolf. According to the records, a level 1 mutant werewolf's combat power was stronger than a level 3 desolate hunter. However, this was not the most frightening thing. The most frightening thing was encountering a war between werewolves and vampires. The war between werewolves and vampires would involve hundreds of thousands or even millions of vampires and werewolves. Therefore, even a desolate hunter could only take a detour when encountering a war between werewolves and vampires. After all, no matter how strong a desolate hunter was, it was impossible for him to fight against hundreds of thousands or millions of werewolves or vampires. Therefore, there were many warnings on the internet. If encountering a war of the blood wolf, the safest thing to do was to return to the flaming origin continent. This was because during the war of the blood wolf, the entire blood wolf planet was a war zone. Even if one hid in a human city, it was not safe at all. However, Emosher did not care about this. With his many tricks, even if he could not do anything in such a battle, at least escaping would not be a problem. Therefore, he quickly retracted his gaze from the blood moon in the sky and continued to kill the vampires. At this moment, another roar was heard. Squeak, squeak, squeak. It sounded like the sound of a bat. However, Emosher knew that this was the leader of the vampires, who was summoning all the vampires to prepare for battle. However, Emosher used the dragon psychic barrier to block all the vampires within the range of his dragon psychic barrier. These vampires frantically pounded on the dragon psychic barrier, but it was useless. Emosher continued to teleport and kill these vampires. After another hour, the werewolves had finished gathering. Emosher could not see the center of the werewolves within the range of his detection. He could only see the periphery of the werewolves. At present, these werewolves looked no different from normal people. There were males and females, old and young. However, When Emosher used the blood dragon's eye to check their levels, he found that these werewolves, regardless of gender or age, were all at level 10. None of them were below level 10. On the other side, the vampires had also gathered in an abandoned city. There were many more vampires than werewolves. In Emosher's detection, there were so many of them that he could not see the end of them. However, the individual strength of the vampires was much weaker than the werewolves. Apart from most of the level 10 vampires, there were also some below level 10. Chapter 390. In Emosher's investigation, hundreds of thousands of vampires had already started to gather. At the same time, tens of thousands of werewolves had also started to gather. And judging from the current situation, it was obvious that this was just the beginning. More vampires and werewolves were gathering. One could imagine that in the future, there would be tens or even millions of vampires and tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of werewolves. If other hunters saw this, their scalps would definitely go numb and their hearts would tremble. However, Emosher was secretly delighted in his heart. All the vampires and werewolves had gathered together, saving him the trouble of searching everywhere. One had to know that in his eyes, these were not vampires or werewolves at all, but the blood of the Titan dragon. Next, Emosher only paid a little attention to not expose himself too much. He specifically targeted the small vampires who were rushing toward the gathering point. In half an hour, he had hunted hundreds to thousands of vampires. Of course, it was a little boring to always hunt vampires like this. Since there were werewolves now, he would try to hunt them down. In the coverage of the dragon's will, he detected about 5 werewolves rushing toward the gathering point. Emosher teleported and arrived among the 5 werewolves. Originally, he wanted to punch the werewolf at the back as soon as he appeared. However, just as he was about to attack, he suddenly felt an enormous wave of telekinesis pressing down on him. This wave of telekinesis was not the telekinesis of an ordinary telekinesis master. It was even more powerful than a level 10 telekinesis master. When it pressed down on Emosher's body, Emosher actually felt a pressure that he had never felt before. He tried to use his dragon's will to counterattack. In the end, his dragon's will could only spread to a range of 1 meter around him. He could not counterattack the powerful telekinesis at all. Emosher thought to himself that this was not good. He hurriedly teleported 100 kilometers away. Then, he used the blood dragon's eye to investigate the 5 werewolves. 4 of them were normal level 10 werewolves. However, the last one shocked Emosher. This werewolf, from the outside, looked like a little lowly. If she were to put on the princess dress from the video, she would look exactly like a little princess. However, when Emosher used the blood dragon's eye to look at her, he discovered something different. Race: werewolf level 10 werewolf, level 1 psychic talent skill, mind control good housework. Apart from being a werewolf equivalent to a level 10 scavenger, this little lowly was also a spiritual reader. What is a spiritual reader? Above level 10 psychic master was the spiritual psychic master. In addition to being able to use telekinesis to control objects like a psychic grandmaster, a psychic could also use telekinesis to influence a person's mind. He could even directly control the consciousness of others. Furthermore, after becoming a spiritual reader, one could awaken a variety of talents. This girl used mind control the moment she awakened. She was indeed a little perverted. Just as Emosher was thinking about this, the girl's telekinesis spread out. Moreover, it was so powerful that it directly pressed down on Emosher, as if Mount Tai was pressing down on him. Emosher frowned slightly. He used dragon will to protect himself and quickly teleported away. Facing a spiritual reader with mind control skills like this was really troublesome. Emosher teleported more than 100 kilometers away. At this moment, he seemed to have exceeded the range of the little lowly's spiritual sense. Her spiritual sense didn't chase after Emosher anymore. At this moment, Emosher already had an idea in his heart. It might be difficult for others to deal with such a powerful creature. But for him, it wasn't difficult. According to the direction that the 5 werewolves were heading, Emosher teleported a few times in a row and teleported to the path that they had to pass through. After waiting for about 5 minutes, he saw that the 5 werewolves had already rushed over. Emosher was lying on an open space by the forest. He activated camouflage. His entire body looked like it was slowly turning into a piece of withered wood. Then, he took out the wormhole sniper rifle that he had signed in. What surprised him was that the moment he took out the sniper rifle, his camouflage skill actually changed the appearance of the sniper rifle. The skills given by the system were indeed abnormal. The little Lolita werewolf pouted and ran over while scolding, "You're so stupid. That guy ran away so fast. Otherwise, he would be dead today." The other werewolves also revealed looks of disgust. "He actually tried to sneak attack us. I smelled the disgusting stench on their bodies as soon as they appeared. Yeah, humans who overestimate themselves." Emosher stealthily aimed the scope at the little loli. The moment the scope caught the little loli, the sniper rifle automatically recognized her face and marked her as the target. However, Emosher didn't immediately pull the trigger. This place was too far away. And he didn't know much about spiritual readers. Who knew if the spiritual reader master would be able to react at such a distance? Therefore, to be on the safe side, it was better to wait for them to get closer before making a move. Another 2 minutes later, the 5 werewolves were only 100 meters away from Emosher. Under such circumstances, they should have been able to sense the danger nearby. This was the combat intuition they had developed after a long period of battle. However, Emosher's camouflage skill was abnormal here. It wouldn't be detected by any spiritual detection. When the loli was closer, Emosher took a deep breath. His right index finger suddenly exerted force. Bang! A loud sound was heard. A high-explosive bullet instantly shot out from the muzzle of the gun. In the next moment, it disappeared from Emosher's sight. The little loli finally felt the danger. She hurriedly used her psychic power to investigate her surroundings. However, at this moment, a high-explosive bullet had already hit her head. Although her spiritual sense was strong, her body was only the body of an ordinary werewolf. How could she withstand the attack of this high-explosive bullet? Boom, flames and blood splattered in all directions. Not to mention the little loli's head, even the upper half of her body exploded into a bloody mist. The faces of the 4 werewolves around her were all splashed with blood. The 4 werewolves were all shocked and let out wolf howls. Howl, howl, howl. At the same time, they all instantly prostrated themselves on the ground. Their limbs turned into the limbs of wolves. Their mouths quickly became long. Their teeth turned into sharp fangs. A long wolf tail grew behind them. Thick hair grew all over their bodies. Not only did their appearance change, but also their size. When they transformed into wolves, their bodies also rapidly increased in size. Each wolf was more than 10 meters long. They were all about 2 meters tall. When Emosher saw this, he understood. No wonder those vampires weren't a match for the werewolves. Just this size alone crushed the vampires. Moreover, there were spiritual readers among the werewolves. Chapter 391. The 4 wolves, each more than 10 meters long, rushed towards Emosher at the same time. Emosher could feel that the aura of these 4 10-meter-long giant wolves was far beyond that of a level 10 blood breed. If a level 10 hunter were to face such a level 10 werewolf, he would definitely be tortured to death. But Emosher didn't give them any chance at all. With a thought, a knife appeared in his hand. This saber was blood-red in color. It was so red that it looked like blood could drip out. From the head to the hilt, it had a small S-shaped streamlined shape. The tip of the knife was extremely sharp. There was an S-shaped hollow line on the body of the knife, sticking to the blade and extending from the tip to the guard of the knife. On the back of the knife, there were more than 10 saw teeth. Overall, it looked very scientific and mysterious. This was the mysterious ice magic slayer that Emosher hadn't used for a long time. The werewolf's vitality was extremely strong. Even if Emosher just shot the little loli in the head and the upper half of her body was still recovering quickly. And to kill the werewolf, he needed the cooperation of the ice attribute. The only thing that Emosher was a little worried was that he had used the mysterious ice magic slayer several times on Earth. At that time, he was only dealing with small mutated zombies. And now he was dealing with werewolves that were several levels higher than mutated zombies. He didn't know if the mysterious ice magic slayer would be useful. And the giant wolf was 10 meters long, while the mysterious ice magic slayer was only a little more than a meter. In front of the giant wolf, it was like a small knife. It was really a little inconspicuous. When the werewolves rushed over, embark teleported and was already behind a giant wolf. The mysterious ice magic slayer aimed at the back of its waist and chopped down. Wolves had copper heads, iron brains, and tofu waists. So when an experienced hunter encountered a wolf, he would attack the wolf's waist. Crack. The moment the mysterious ice magic slayer met the giant wolf, it easily cut into its waist. And a long bloody wound appeared on its waist. However, before the blood could flow out, the giant wolf's wound quickly froze. And the speed of the freezing was extremely fast. Almost in an instant, the entire wolf's body was frozen. Moreover, that was not all. The layer of ice followed the giant wolf's limbs and spread to the ground. Then, everything within a 100-meter radius was instantly frozen. The ground, grass, trees, rivers, and stones within 100 meters were all frozen. The remaining 3 wolves were about to continue pouncing towards embark when they were suddenly frozen into ice sculptures. Even the little lowly, who was recovering, was frozen into an ice sculpture and stopped recovering. Within a radius of 100 meters, there was a layer of cold air. In the sky, he planned to fly past this area. However, as soon as it passed through the air, it was instantly frozen. It fell from the sky and crashed onto the ice. With a crashing sound, it shattered into blood-red ice cubes. embark used his dragon's will to lightly shake it. Crush. The 4 giant wolves and the little lowly's ice sculptures all shattered into pieces of blood-red ice on the ground. The giant wolf that was cut by the mysterious ice devil-slaying saber was still emitting an unpleasant smell after being shattered into ice. It was obvious that the mystic ice devil-slaying blade had released a corrosive liquid when it had struck it. It corroded the inside and froze the outside. embark stood at the center of the ice layer. Looking at the surrounding scene, he was secretly shocked. The mysterious ice devil-slaying blade strength was actually so strong? Back then, the mysterious ice devil-slaying blade had a growth attribute and absorbed 100 evolution points every day to grow. embark did not care about this. It only absorbed 100 evolution points every day. How could it grow? Moreover, only a year had passed. Even if it grew, how much could it grow? However, he did not expect that it had grown to the point where it could kill a level 10 werewolf in just a year. Moreover, it could instantly kill many werewolves with a single attack. As expected, the system's products were all extraordinary. It was also at this moment that a system notification sounded in embark's mind. Frowny face killed a spiritual reader. Hidden mechanism triggered. Every time you kill a level 1 spiritual reader, you will obtain a strand of dragon's will. At the same time, a number appeared in embark's mind. Dragon's will? 11,000. embark was suddenly delighted. From the memories of the werewolves just now, he knew that there were tens of thousands of spiritual readers among the werewolves. It seemed that the improvement of his dragon's will was just around the corner. Next, embark killed a few more waves of werewolves in a row. These werewolf groups had 5 or 6 small ones and 30 or 50 large ones. What they all had in common was that there was a spiritual reader in each werewolf group. However, no matter if there were 5 or 6 of them or 30 or 50 of them, embark basically used the same method to kill them. First, he concealed himself and ambushed in front of them. When they were close, he used the wormhole sniper rifle to shoot at the spiritual reader among them. While waiting for their spiritual reader master to recover, embark quickly attacked. The mysterious ice devil-slaying blade directly froze 100 meters. This series of actions could basically kill any werewolf group in an instant. After killing a few waves, embark looked at the number in his mind. Frowny face dragon's will, 111,000. Originally, embark had planned to raise his cultivation base to that of a desolate hunter. However, a spiritual reader had appeared now. They posed a great threat to him. Even if he became a level 1 desolate hunter, he still wouldn't have any advantage against these level 1 spiritual readers. Therefore, he decided to raise his dragon's will to level 6 first. In the next few hours, he kept hunting these werewolf spiritual readers. The number in his mind also kept increasing. Dragon's will, 831,000, however, he was very careful and only hunted small werewolf groups. When the battle between the werewolves and the blood breeds really started, it would be time for him to hunt these werewolves on a large scale. Another 5 hours later, the blood moon in the sky was even redder. It was as if there was a giant demon's blood-red eyes staring at the entire earth in the middle of the night. It was also at this moment that the werewolves and the blood breeds moved almost at the same time. In a huge abandoned city. This was the gathering place of the blood breeds. More than 1 million blood breeds flapped their blood-red demon wings and flew north. 1 million blood breeds covered the sky and the sun. Even half of the huge blood moon in the sky was covered by it. In a forest in the north, more than 100,000 werewolves had also gathered. They had all transformed into giant wolves that were more than 10 meters long. Under the lead of the alpha wolf, they ran towards the south. Behind them, the smoke and dust that rose up also turned blood red under the reflection of the blood moon. More than 2 hours later, the two sides gathered beside a large river. When embark saw this situation, his heart seemed to be burning with hot blood. How could a war between millions of creatures not make one's blood boil? Most importantly, if the two sides fought, it would be chaos. He could fish in troubled waters. Chapter 392. Embark was waiting for the war between the werewolves and the blood breeds. At the same time, Tianlin City was filled with grief and fear. The natives knew that they would definitely suffer in the war between the werewolves and the blood breeds. This was the experience that they had gained over thousands of years. In these thousands of years, they had tried all kinds of methods. They had tried to please the blood breeds and the werewolves, fought against the blood breeds and the werewolves, and even dug underground shelters. But no matter what method they came up with, no matter if the werewolves or the blood breeds won, in the end, it was always the humans who suffered. But this time, the situation was different. Because there were still gods in the city. Of course, they also knew that they were not real gods. But those people were extremely powerful, far more powerful than the natives. So if they had any hope of escaping this time, it all depended on these people. Thinking of this, the city lord led hundreds of higher-ups of the city, representing more than 100,000 people in the city, to the residence of the gods. At this time, those people had just walked out of the house. They seemed to be a little panicked. However, when they saw the natives, their footsteps slowed down. In front of these natives, they still had to maintain the demeanor of gods. The city lord took the lead and knelt down in front of these gods. The rest of the higher-ups also knelt down devoutly. The city lord said sincerely, "Lord gods, the war between the blood breeds and the werewolves is imminent. Tianlin City will also suffer a great calamity. Please save us, Lord gods." The rest of the people followed and said in unison, "Please save us, Lord gods. Please save us, Lord gods." Hearing this, those people looked at each other. One of the young men shook his head and laughed. "You have done too many evil deeds. This is the punishment from the heavens, called heavenly tribulation. You can't hide." As he said this, he chuckled a few times, activated his hover skates, and flew out of the city. The rest of the level 10 scavengers also activated their hover skates and quickly flew out of the city. In the blink of an eye, they disappeared into the distant night sky. They were escaping from the Blood Wolf Star. Seeing these gods leave, the city lord and the rest of the people's hearts sank. They were going to be punished by the heavens again. They would not be able to escape this fate. The city lord turned around and spoke to the rest of the higher-ups with a pained voice. "Perhaps the gods are right. We have done too much evil. This is the punishment of the heavens." Everyone was silent. Let's talk about the 10 or so LV-10 scavenger hunters. After leaving Tianlin City, they flew to the nearest coordinates. However, they realized that there were vampires everywhere near the coordinates. They had no choice but to rush to another coordinate. However, when they arrived at the coordinates, they discovered that those coordinates were also filled with vampires. They rushed to the third coordinate. However, he discovered that the third coordinate had already been occupied by werewolves. F***ck, these guys aren't here for us, are they? Of course, he was just complaining in anger. Of course, these vampires and werewolves weren't here for them. In the eyes of the vampires and werewolves, there was no distinction between natives and outsiders. In their eyes, these were all humans. Lowly and weak humans. Now, all three coordinates were occupied and they could not leave the Bloodwolf Star. It was extremely dangerous to stay in the wilderness at night. Someone suggested, let's go back to Tianlin City first. When the vampires and werewolves attack Tianlin City, the coordinates will be empty. At that time, we will take the opportunity to rush back to the flame-beginning continent. The rest nodded. They had placed several wireless cameras in the distance of the three coordinates. Then, they rushed back to Tianlin City. The citizens of Tianlin City were surprised to see the Sky Celestials return to Tianlin City. The gods are back. Are they here to save us? That's great. With the gods here, no matter how strong the werewolves and vampires are, they won't dare to attack Tianlin City. Those gods had returned to Tianlin City, but they did not pay attention to the natives. They went straight to their own residences and connected to the wireless cameras. They were waiting for the vampires and werewolves to start fighting. Finally, more than 100,000 werewolves and more than 1,000,000 vampires met in the wilderness. Both sides stopped at a distance of 500 meters. The Blood Clan members covered the sky and floated in the air. More than 100,000 werewolves stopped on the ground and faced each other from a distance. Then, they did not break out into a great battle as everyone had expected. Instead, they turned their heads and headed in one direction. That direction was Heaven's Descent City. When the citizens of the flame-beginning continent saw this scene through the cameras, they were all shocked. What the hell? The vampires and werewolves are natural enemies. Why aren't they fighting? Why are they all heading toward Tianlin City? The carefree young man chuckled and said, "What's there to be afraid of? Once they move, the coordinates will be empty. Let's look at the coordinates. When it's safe, we'll go over immediately." Thus, everyone switched the camera lens to the coordinates. But at this moment, everyone was dumbfounded. They saw that the first coordinate was not empty. More than 10,000 vampires were guarding it. Everyone frowned. What the hell? Let's look at the second coordinate. They switched the cameras to the second coordinate. Then they saw more than 10,000 vampires guarding it. Then they switched to the third coordinate. There were about 1,000 werewolves standing guard at the coordinates. Everyone was stunned when they saw this. What the hell? Are they really coming for us? The coordinates they're guarding are the coordinates we escaped from. They must be coming for us. As a result, the Flaming Continent's hunters began to panic. Damn it, we're finished. Think of a way, think of a way. What should we do? We can't beat them and we can't escape. What should we do? Just a moment ago, these people thought they could stay out of this. But now they realized that these vampires and werewolves were coming for them. For a moment, they were even more panicked than the natives of the city. At the same time, in the wilderness, Emosher also realized that something was wrong. What the hell are these werewolves and vampires doing? How did they get together? Puzzled, Emosher did not act rashly. Instead, he created a clone and secretly followed these people. As for his main body, he directly rushed to the third coordinate. There were more than 1,000 werewolves there, and there should be 10 spiritualists. Chapter 393. When a large number of vampires and werewolves were heading toward Tianlin City, Emosher headed toward the third coordinate. There were more than 1,000 werewolves at the third coordinate, which meant that there were at least 100 spiritualists there. A moment later, he teleported 200 kilometers away from these people. At this point, he didn't continue forward. After all, these 100 spiritualists weren't to be trifled with. If all 100 of their spiritual senses pressed down on him together, Emosher wouldn't be able to withstand it. After pondering for a moment, Emosher had an idea. He condensed 99 doppelgangers. Now, after the upgrade of the system, Emosher's doppelgangers had also increased. He could now condense 100 doppelgangers. Each of the 99 doppelgangers held a guiding device and quickly teleported forward. The werewolf spiritualists at the third coordinate didn't use their spiritual senses to check their surroundings all the time. And with so many werewolves here, there was no need for them to check their surroundings all the time. This gave Emosher's doppelgangers an opportunity. They all teleported to a place about 1,000 meters away from these werewolves. Then, they all used their guides and aimed at the werewolf spiritualists here. Soon, they had marked the 10 spiritualists here. At this moment, Emosher, who was 200 kilometers away, had already set up his sniper rifle. The moment the targets were marked, 10 targets appeared in his sniper scope. They were marked as number 1, number 2, all the way to number 99. Emosher said softly, "Target number 1. His right index finger gently pulled the trigger. Bang! There was a loud bang. The bullet left the muzzle and disappeared. The next moment, it appeared in front of a werewolf spiritualist 200 kilometers away. The spiritualist felt that something was wrong. He quickly tried to condense his telekinesis. However, bang! His upper body had already exploded into a bloody mist. At the same time, Emosher's index finger continued to pull the trigger 100 times. Don't doubt Emosher's hand speed. As a level 10 hunter, his hand speed was unimaginable to ordinary people. It was just a sniper rifle, but it had the firing speed of a machine gun. Bang 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 bang. 200 kilometers away, the remaining 99 spirit readers also had their heads blown off. All the werewolves were shocked to see this. Enemy! Damn it, transform. Damn it, transform. Damn it, transform. As a result, almost all of the 1,000 werewolves transformed into werewolves amidst their curses. However, after losing the psychic, these werewolves posed no threat to Emosher. Emosher held the mysterious Ice Devil Slayer saber and teleported to the middle of the werewolves. The mystic Ice Devil slaying saber slashed at a werewolf. Although the werewolf managed to avoid being hit in the vitals, its leg was still hit. He was secretly delighted. As long as it wasn't a vital point, the werewolf's recovery speed would heal the wound completely in a few minutes. However, just as this thought flashed through his mind, the surface of his body was rapidly frozen. At the same time, the cold air invaded his body. From the inside out, his body was quickly frozen into ice crystals. That was not all. His wound was still being corroded. Although all of this took a long time to describe, it actually happened in an instant. When the werewolf was frozen, within a few seconds, the area within 100 meters was completely frozen. All the werewolves within 100 meters were also completely frozen. Emosher's draconic thought swept across. Crash! All the ice wolves within 100 meters were shattered into blood-red gems on the ground. When the rest of the werewolves saw this, they were all shocked. In their memory, humans were very fragile. Even those so-called celestial gods from other worlds could not kill them one by one. They could even kill those celestial gods. However, they had never seen someone like this human who could kill hundreds of their brothers in a single blow. In shock and anger, they all rushed toward Emosher. However, this was exactly what Emosher wanted. He slashed out again. Once again, the area within 100 meters was frozen. And after 2 stacks, the ice layer within 100 meters had reached more than a meter thick. With a sweep of the draconic thought, these werewolves were once again turned into broken ice. This time, the remaining werewolves finally learned their lesson. They did not dare to attack Emosher again. Instead, they stayed outside the range of Emosher's ice layer and thought of countermeasures. Emosher did not give them a chance. With a teleport, he appeared behind another werewolf. With a slash of the blade, the area within 100 meters was once again frozen. When the remaining 500 werewolves saw this, they did not dare to stay any longer and hurriedly fled in all directions. Emosher would not give them any chance. He constantly used teleportation to keep up with these werewolves. The mysterious Ice Devil slaying blade was constantly harvesting lives. In just 5 minutes, more than 1,000 werewolves were all killed by embark. Not a single one was left alive. At the same time, a message appeared in his mind. Frowny Face killed 100 spiritual psychics, obtained 100 strands of draconic thought. Then he looked at the numbers in his mind. Frowny Face draconic thought. 1871000. After dealing with these guys, the next step was to wait and see what the Blood Kindred and werewolves were up to. At the same time, in Sky's Descent City, the dozen or so hunters from the Flaming Dawn continent had seen Lu Xian kill so many werewolves on his own through the surveillance cameras. And he even had the unique skill of creating clones. They were all very surprised. Is this the mysterious strong man? What a good job. He killed more than 1,000 werewolves alone. This is too crazy. Looking at his strength, he should be at least a level 3 hunter. Amidst the surprise, they were also pleasantly surprised. He killed all the werewolves at the 3rd coordinate. We can teleport over immediately. Then what are we waiting for? Let's go. Let's go. Hence, these dozen or so people once again activated their hovershoes. Under the surprised and angry gazes of the people in Sky's Descent City, they flew into the distance. The 3rd coordinate was not far from Sky's Descent City. A moment later, they had already bypassed the Blood Kindred and werewolves and arrived at the 3rd coordinate. At this time, embark was wiping his sniper rifle while thinking about how to deal with the spiritual psychics among the werewolves. As far as he was concerned, the only thing that could threaten him was those spiritual psychics. In fact, it was not difficult for him to kill these spiritual psychics. As long as he took out the Sea Dragon clone, he could easily kill these spiritual psychics. However, he had already asked the system before. The system's answer was, using the Sea Dragon clone to kill these spiritual psychics would not allow him to obtain draconic thought. This was a headache. Just as he was thinking hard about a solution, the draconic thought suddenly detected that the dozen or so people were flying over. Soon, those people also arrived at the coordinates. They looked at the ice shards all over the ground and the world within 1,000 meters that had been frozen into ice crystals. Now that they were there, they could feel embark's power even more. Chapter 394. The dozen or so level 10 hunters had heard of a mysterious powerhouse before. Now they finally saw him in person. Mysterious powerhouse. Thank you so much. If it weren't for you, we would probably have died on the Blood Wolf Star. I will never forget your kindness for the rest of my life. These people spoke one after another. However, they didn't think so in their hearts. The reason why they had come to the Blood Wolf Star this time was because of this guy. They had returned empty-handed and almost lost their lives here. He was the one who killed almost all the vampires outside the city. If it weren't for him, they might have already succeeded in their training and become desolate hunters. However, they only thought about it in their hearts and didn't show it on their faces. At this time, they just wanted to leave this damned place and return to their sect. After returning to the sect, they would report this kid to the sect. At that time, this kid would have to bear the consequences. Embark didn't intend to pay attention to these guys. However, with his caution, he naturally wouldn't let these people leave casually. He directly plundered these people's memories to check. He couldn't help but sneer in his heart, seeing these people salute him with their fists and then say goodbye to him. In embark's hand, the mysterious ice devil-slaying blade appeared. However, this time, he controlled the mysterious ice devil-slaying blade with his dragon thoughts. It was like a blood-red meteor, flying towards a level 10 hunter in an instant. It pierced through that person's body. That person's body was quickly frozen. At the same time, the area within 100 meters was also frozen. The bodies of the dozen or so people were all frozen into ice sculptures. Even if they were turned into ice sculptures, their eyes were still filled with disbelief. They didn't expect that this guy, who looked very ordinary on the surface, would attack without warning, without even saying a word. They didn't even have time to react. In fact, even if they reacted, what could they do? Would they be able to escape if they reacted? Not to mention that they had resentment toward embark in their hearts. Even if they didn't, would embark let them go? They had already seen the strength that emosher had displayed. Once they returned to the sect, they would definitely report back to the sect. Their sects knew that he was so strong and had so many strange skills. Thinking about it, it was obvious that there would be some who coveted his secrets and wanted to harm him. By the time these people were dealt with, the Blood Tribe and werewolves had already arrived at Sky Descent City. Just as all the humans in Sky's Descent City were trembling with fear, the leader of the werewolves stepped forward. It was a muscular man who looked to be in his 30s. He was wearing a sleeveless singlet, and his muscles were bulging. It was obvious that he was the strength type. Alpha Wolf Victor. He stood in front of all the werewolves and vampires and shouted to the people on the city wall, "Humans of Heaven's Descent City, you don't have to worry or be afraid. Our target this time is not you." When the people of Heaven's Descent City heard this, they all looked at each other. The vampires and werewolves stopped fighting? You don't want to fight humans anymore? If the target was not the humans of Heaven's Descent City, then who was it? Victor the Alpha continued. "We have a common enemy, which is your so-called heavenly gods. They are not heavenly gods, but humans from another world. Now you should know the truth." Victor then told them about the Flaming Dawn continent and the hunting ground. These humans were all very surprised. The people of another world actually treated the Sirius Star as a huge hunting ground? And they, the humans, vampires, and werewolves, were just prey in this huge hunting ground? This sounded too unbelievable. More than half of them did not believe it. However, as long as the werewolves and vampires did not attack them, they would listen to whatever the werewolves said. Now, hand over the fake heavenly gods in your city. In the future, we, the werewolves, vampires, and humans, will be united against the enemy. When the city lord heard this, he hurriedly said, "They just flew away, escaped." At the same time, similar scenes were happening in the other cities of the Sirius Star. All the werewolves and vampires were approaching the human cities, demanding that they hand over the fake heavenly gods. The humans could only hand over the scavengers. And the fate of these hunters was to be executed. There were thousands of cities on the Sirius Star. In each city, there were at least a dozen scavengers, and at most 1,000 scavengers. In the end, more than 50,000 scavengers were killed by the werewolves. At the same time, Victor stood on the city wall. He ordered all the werewolves, vampires, and humans, "Now, all the fake heavenly gods are dead. There is only one fake heavenly god left on the Sirius Star. Remember this face, it's him." As he spoke, a huge flag was raised beside him. On the flag, there was a person's portrait. This person was none other than emosher. Alpha Wolf Victor pointed at emosher's portrait and said loudly, "This fake heavenly god is much stronger than the other heavenly gods. But we have 7 million werewolves, nearly 100 million vampires, and 30 million humans in the world. If we work together, we will be invincible." The werewolves, vampires, and humans below raised their right arms and shouted in unison, "Kill the fake heavenly gods, invincible! Kill the fake heavenly gods, invincible! Kill the fake heavenly gods, invincible!" Victor the Alpha continued. "Now, let's start with one of his clones." As he spoke, his right hand pointed at emosher's clone, who was disguised as a native. In the next moment, a werewolf spiritualist used his spiritual sense to envelop emosher's clone and threw him high into the air. Emosher's clone couldn't move at all. The werewolf spiritualist controlled him and circled him. The Alpha Wolf, Victor, said loudly, "Remember this face, remember this human. Now, everyone go to the east, at the foot of Karen Mountain. He's there." As he spoke, he clenched his right fist. Bang! Emosher's clone in the air suddenly exploded into a cloud of blood mist. In the next moment, all the werewolves, vampires, and humans rushed to the east. At the same time, emosher, who was at the foot of Karen Mountain, felt all of this through his clone. He was very surprised. This Alpha Wolf Victor actually knew so much. Although he knew from the memories of other werewolf spiritualists that this Wolf Victor wasn't simple, he didn't expect it to be so complicated. It turned out that this Wolf Victor had already advanced to become a level 2 spiritualist. After becoming a level 2 spiritualist, he awakened a talent, foresight. In other words, he could know many things in advance. That was why he knew about the flaming land and the hunting ground. That was why he knew about embark and his clone. Of course, he didn't know everything in advance. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been unaware of embark's sneak attack on the third coordinate. Chapter 395. At this moment, embark was very surprised. This alpha wolf actually had the ability to foresee things. This ability was really abnormal. If he hadn't met him, this guy would have been the main character. It was a pity that he had met him. In his story, he was just a small supporting character. He was just a small character who couldn't survive more than 3 chapters and had to receive a box lunch. As far as embark knew, this Victor's prophetic talent had only awakened not long ago, so it wasn't very powerful yet. For some big events and truths, he could be 100% prophetic. That was why he knew so much about the truth of the flaming land and the blood wolf star. However, for some small events, the probability of him being able to foresee was very small. Therefore, embark didn't have to worry too much. These guys were all here to catch him, right? Very well, I'll wait for you here. Thinking of this, embark scattered his more than 100 clones and hid in all directions. He used the camouflage concealment skill to hide well. As for himself, he stayed at the foot of the mountain and set up his sniper rifle. More than 2 hours later, the first echelon of about 100,000 vampires and 7,000 werewolves had arrived. Among the 7,000 werewolves, there were more than 700 spiritualists. embark let his clones mark the more than 30 spiritualist werewolves gathered within a radius of 100 meters. Then he quickly pulled the trigger. Bang 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 bang. The sniper rifle once again had the firing speed of a machine gun. There was a need to explain here. An ordinary sniper rifle, no matter how fast it was pulled, couldn't have the firing speed of a machine gun. Even the sniper rifle of the flaming land couldn't. However, embark's sniper rifle was a product of the system. Even if embark's hand speed was 10 times faster, it could still fire 10 times faster than a machine gun. After blowing up more than 30 spiritualist werewolves, embark had already teleported into the group of werewolves. Then, the mystic ice devil slaying blade in his hand instantly slashed down. Within a radius of 100 meters, everything was sealed in ice. The more than 30 spiritualist werewolves could no longer recover. At the same time, the rest of the spiritual psychics had already discovered embark. Their spiritual senses quickly blasted towards embark. Embark hurriedly teleported 1,000 kilometers away. Just as he was about to teleport, he could feel an overwhelming pressure pressing down on him. Fortunately, in the next moment, he had already appeared 1,000 kilometers away. Whew! He heaved a sigh of relief. It was too dangerous. It was too dangerous. It seemed that he had to think of a more reliable method. But then again, to be able to obtain 30 strands of dragon wool within a second was still very satisfying. At the same time, 1,000 kilometers away, the 100,000 Blood Tribe members and the 7,000 werewolves watched the kid kill more than 200 werewolves right under their noses. They were all shocked and furious. He was shocked because that guy had killed over 200 werewolves in a single second. His strength was far beyond their imagination. He was angry because that fellow was too lawless, completely disregarding the werewolves and vampires. Especially when there were more than 700 werewolf spiritual psychics here. In shock and anger, the leader of this group of werewolves and vampires shouted loudly, "All spiritual psychics, be vigilant and open your spiritual senses to the maximum." Therefore, all 700 werewolf spiritual psychics opened their spiritual senses to the maximum. At the same time, embark already had a countermeasure in mind. He had the 100 clones that had not yet been exposed mark more than 40 of the closest spiritual psychics. Then he directly released the Sea Dragon clone. The Sea Dragon clone directly transformed into its combat form. Now that embark had been promoted to a level 10 hunter, his Sea Dragon clone had also become a level 10 mutated wild beast. Its length had reached 1,000 meters. Then, this 1,000-meter-long sea dragon clone teleported and appeared among the werewolves and vampires. Then, its 400-meter-long giant tail swept across. Bang 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 bang. A large group of Blood Tribe members was directly swept into meat paste. Another teleportation, and another large group of Blood Tribe members was swept into meat paste. This sudden appearance of this huge creature shocked all the vampires and werewolves. At this moment, everyone's attention was focused on the sea dragon clone. They attacked the sea dragon clone. All the spiritual psychics also attacked the sea dragon clone, created illusions, and even tried to control the sea dragon clone's consciousness. However, the sea dragon clone was a full 9 levels higher than them. Under the absolute suppression of levels, no amount of fancy tricks would be of any use. It was also at this moment that Emosher's consciousness returned to his main body. Then, the sniper rifle fired continuously. Bang 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 bang. More than 40 spiritual psychics were instantly blown into a bloody mist. In the next moment, Emosher teleported and appeared on the scene. In an instant, the surrounding 100 meters were frozen. In his mind, another system notification came: frowny face, 43 spiritual psychics killed, 43 strands of dragon consciousness obtained. Then, Emosher teleported again and escaped. In the end, he was pleasantly surprised to find that not many spiritual psychics had noticed him in a short period of time. So, he once again marked dozens of spiritual psychics. Doing the same, he killed more than 50. This time, the spiritual psychics finally discovered Emosher. However, they didn't dare to use all their dragon consciousness on Emosher. After all, they still had to deal with that huge creature. The sea dragon clone took the lives of countless vampires with a simple sweep of its tail. The werewolf's self-healing ability was strong, and the sweep couldn't kill them. However, Emosher didn't want the sea dragon clone to kill them. The sea dragon clone only needed to attract the attention of all the spiritual psychics. In fact, the sea dragon clone did far more than Emosher imagined. It kept wandering around these spiritual psychics, herding them together. This way, Emosher's clones would be able to mark more people. Emosher could also kill more spiritual psychics in one go. After about an hour, he finally killed all 733 spiritual psychics. At this moment, he took a look at his mind. Dragon consciousness, 9071000. As long as he killed less than 100 spiritual psychics, his dragon consciousness would level up. Next, Emosher didn't waste time dealing with the remaining vampires and werewolves. Instead, he left them to the sea dragon clone to deal with. As for himself, he had already commanded the 100 clones to ambush the next batch of werewolves. The second batch of werewolves was much more numerous. It reached 15,000. Among them, the number of spiritual psyche masters reached 1,500. 1,500 spiritual reader masters? This was definitely a rather shocking number. Of course, for Emosher, this was also quite a lot of dragon consciousness. Too many things have happened in the past month. My child is sick and hospitalized, my father is hospitalized, my mother-in-law has a fracture, and my wife has an exam. I can keep 8 of them busy by myself. As a result, he spent less time on the books. I forgot a lot of things that I wrote before. The Dragon Shadow step that I wrote before seems to have reached great success and can move 1,000 kilometers. But it doesn't seem like it. I flipped through some chapters but couldn't find it. I'll count it as 1,000 in the future. If I'm wrong, I'm sorry, everyone. Chapter 396. Emosher used the Blood Dragon's eye to see the 1,500 spiritualists. He was secretly delighted. It seemed that the improvement of Dragon Will was not far away. Thinking of this, Emosher ordered the Sea Dragon clone to attract the attention of the werewolves and blood breeds again. He did the same thing and once again killed these spirit reader masters. Of course, these spiritualists quickly discovered Emosher. But so what if they discovered him? Firstly, they still needed to divert their attention to deal with the 1,000-meter-long Sea Dragon clone. Secondly, each time Emosher appeared, he would only appear for a second at most. Moreover, his position was constantly changing. One moment he was in the east, and the next moment he was in the west. It was difficult for them to truly grasp Mo Shi's true position while dealing with the Sea Dragon clone. Just like that, another 10 minutes passed. After killing another batch of spiritualists, a system prompt appeared in Mo Shi's mind. Frowny face dragon will 10001000. You can advance. Do you want to advance now? Mo Shi nodded. Advance. This advancement will take 5 minutes. During the advancement, you will not be able to use Dragon Will. The system reminded him. Mo Shi immediately entered his dragon cave. When he couldn't use Dragon Will, it was better to enter his dragon cave. This was safe and could cultivate Dragon Will. 5 minutes later, a system prompt appeared in Mo Shi's mind. Frowny face dragon will advancement successful. Mo Shi looked at his attributes. Name, Mo Shi. Level 10 Scavenger, Level 6 Long Yen Shi. Evolution direction, Titan Dragon. He had finally reached Level 6 Long Yen Shi. Mo Shi's dragon will spread out. He could see everything within a 300-kilometer radius. He could clearly feel that the dragon will was much stronger than before. However, he still had to test how much stronger it was through battle. After leaving the dragon cave, he teleported and once again arrived on the battlefield. This time, he didn't use a sniper rifle or the mysterious ice devil slaying blade. Instead, he teleported not far away from a level 1 spiritualist. The level 1 psychic saw Mo Shi appear and then looked at Mo Shi's sea dragon avatar, which was still far away from him. Without hesitation, he sent all of his spiritual senses towards Mo Shi. Mo Shi also sent out his draconic will. However, he did not press down on his opponent. Instead, he cautiously wrapped his entire body. When the spiritual psyche master's spiritual psyche pressed down on Mo Shi's body, the enormous dragon psyche surrounding Mo Shi didn't move at all. The Long Yen Shi was shocked when he saw this. How did this guy's spiritual senses increase so much in just 5 minutes? This was illogical. Thinking of this, he hurriedly wanted to call the other spiritual psychics. However, at this moment, Mo Shi's draconic will moved. It was a direct counter-suppression. Almost instantly, the spiritual thoughts of the spiritual psyche master were suppressed back into his body. The spiritual psychic was pressured by Mo Shi's dragon's will. His eyes were bulging, his face was red, and his blood vessels were clearly visible. The next moment, bang! It directly exploded. This was the powerful effect of Mo Shi's draconic will leveling up. An increase in draconic will by 1 level was equivalent to an increase in Long Yen Shi by 2 levels. Therefore, Mo Shi's draconic will was equivalent to a level 2 spiritual psychic. And it was a level 2 peak spiritual psychic. Killing a mere level 1 spiritual psychic was naturally not a problem. Moreover, Mo Shi's draconic will killed the werewolf spiritual psychic at the cellular level. Therefore, he didn't even have a chance to heal himself. Phew! Mo Shi let out a long breath. Previously, these spiritual psychics were the greatest threat to him. But now, after the draconic will leveled up, the threat no longer existed. He took another look at his mind. He saw a display in his mind. Frowny face draconic will 110000. In other words, the next time the draconic will leveled up, he would need to kill 100,000 werewolf spiritual psychics. It seemed like a huge number. However, after Mo Shi's draconic will leveled up, killing these werewolf spiritual psychics was not a problem at all. At this moment, hundreds of werewolves and blood breeds around Mo Shi had already discovered him. They attacked him one after another. Mo Shi's draconic will moved. Bang 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 bang. All the werewolves and blood breeds felt an incomparably huge pressure on their bodies at that moment. Then, their bodies exploded into a cloud of blood mist. Following that, Mo Shi's draconic will spread out once again. It directly attacked the 10 spiritual psychics. With his current draconic will, it was impossible for him to kill 100 spiritual psychics in one go. However, he could still carry more than 1,000 spiritual psychics and kill 10 spiritual psychics in one go. The next moment, bang 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 bang, the bodies of the 10 spiritual psychics also exploded into a cloud of blood mist. A notification came from his mind. Frowny face killed 10 level 1 spiritual psychics, obtained 10 strands of draconic will. Draconic will, 11100000. When the other spiritual psychics saw this, they were all shocked. They, spiritual psychics, were definitely the strongest existences on the entire Blood Wolf star. But now, in front of this kid, they were like paper. Thinking of this, all the more than 1,000 spiritual psychics used their spiritual psychics to communicate. Let's go together. With the spiritual psychics of more than 1,000 of us, I don't believe that we can't crush him to death. 3, 2, 1, go. Thus, the spiritual psychics of more than 1,000 people joined forces to form a huge mountain and press down on Emosher. However, under the pressure of more than 1,000 people's spiritual psychics, Emosher's draconic will only paused slightly. In the next moment, he used his draconic will to protect himself while pressing down on the 10 spiritual psychics. Bang 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 bang, simple and crude. The 10 spiritual psychics and werewolves exploded into a cloud of blood mist again. In his mind, the system notification came again. Frowny face killed 10 level 1 spiritual psychics, obtained 10 strands of draconic will. Draconic will, 21100000. With the strength of one person, he was able to withstand more than 1,000 spiritual psychics and kill the 10 spiritual psychics on the spot. All the spiritual psyche masters present were aghast. This fellow's spiritual psychics were too strong. Just as they were shocked, Emosher's draconic will had already attacked once again. Bang 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 bang. Another 10 spiritual psychics were killed by him. Killed 10 level 1 spiritual psychics, obtained 10 strands of draconic will. Draconic will, 31100000. After killing 50 spiritual psychics in a row, the remaining spiritual psychics all panicked. He's too strong. Don't act rashly. Retreat a certain distance first and wait for reinforcements. A werewolf roared. The other werewolves and blood breeds also retreated, including those spiritual psychics. However, it was better if they didn't return. Once they retreated, their psychic power wouldn't be so uniform. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Emosher quickly used his telekinesis to suppress the 100 spiritual readers. Bang 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 bang. The 100 spiritual psychics also instantly exploded into a cloud of blood mist. Killed 100 level 1 spiritual psychics, obtained 100 strands of draconic will. Draconic will, 1511000000. In a second, 100 strands of draconic will entered his account. This really made Emosher feel good in his heart. As a result, those spiritual psychics were even more chaotic. This way, it was even more convenient for Emosher. The draconic will pressed over again. Bang 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 bang. Minus 100 spiritual psychics exploded into a cloud of blood mist. Killed 100 level 1 spiritual psychics, obtained 100 strands of draconic will. Draconic will, 2511000000. Chapter 397. When those werewolf spiritualists worked together, it wouldn't be so easy for Mosher to kill them. He could only kill 10 at a time. And when they were in a mess, it was much easier for Emosher to kill them. He could easily kill 100 of them. As for the other werewolves and vampires, they were terrified when they saw the strongest spiritualists among them exploding into a bloody mist. With the sea dragon clone around, they could only turn around and run away quickly. With a thought, Emosher ordered his sea dragon doppelganger to kill them all. Now, Emosher planned to raise his dragon will to level 7 as soon as possible. That way, he would be safer when facing these level 1 spiritualists. Therefore, he didn't have the time to deal with these ordinary werewolves and vampires. The sea dragon clone didn't hold back either. It opened its mouth and swallowed more than 50 werewolves. Emosher focused all his energy on dealing with these spiritualists. Each time, he could kill 100 spiritualists. The numbers in his mind were also constantly jumping. Dragon will, 3511000000. Dragon will, 4511000000. Dragon will, 5511000000. In the end, after killing this wave of spiritualists, his dragon will stopped at a number. Frowny face dragon will 555100000. Mo sure didn't pay any more attention to the remaining werewolves and vampires. He let the sea dragon clone destroy them all. At this moment, within a 5-kilometer radius, there was a layer of blood mist. Even the blood moon in the sky couldn't penetrate this layer of blood mist. Then, under his investigation, the third and fourth waves of attacks had arrived. These two waves combined, there were 13,000 spiritualists among them. Mo Sher's heart was bursting with joy. He wasn't afraid that there were too many spiritualists, but he was afraid that there weren't enough of them. He was still the same as before, lying in ambush in place, waiting for this large wave of vampires and zombies to arrive. These werewolves and vampires smelled the thick blood mist here. They also smelled the scent of werewolves and vampires. They quickly raised their vigilance. However, it was already too late. Bang 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 bang. Without any warning, the bodies of the 100 spiritualists suddenly exploded into 100 clouds of blood mist. At this moment, the rest of the werewolves and vampires finally understood where the blood mist came from. Alert! Be careful! However, their vigilance came a little too late. Bang 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 bang. Another 100 spiritual readers suddenly exploded into a bloody mist. Only then did the remaining 1,100 or so spiritual readers react. One by one, they condensed their spiritual senses and scanned the surroundings. Soon they discovered Mo Sher. Their spiritual senses pressed down on Mo Sher one after another. Instantly, an enormous pressure caused Mo Sher's dragon will to shrink rapidly. It wasn't that Mo Sher's draconic will wasn't strong enough, but that there were simply too many of them. The spiritual senses of 11,000 psychic trainers were no joke. However, it only reduced Mo Sher's spiritual sense fandom from 300 kilometers to 50 kilometers. It wouldn't be of any help to their current battle situation. In addition, at this moment, a huge creature that was 1,000 meters long suddenly appeared on the battlefield. With a sweep of its tail, it wiped out hundreds of vampires. This caused the scene to instantly become chaotic. Those spiritual readers also focused more of their attention on the huge creature that had suddenly appeared. After all, in their perception, this huge creature was much, much more dangerous than this human. And when their attention was on the sea dragon clone, Mo Sher's draconic will had already been activated again. 10. He continued to kill these spirit reader masters. In the beginning, these spiritual psyche masters relied on their numbers to constantly counterattack Mo Sher. But as time passed, they realized that they couldn't stop this spiritual reader at all. Moreover, their companions kept exploding one after another. This made every one of them tremble in fear. No one knew if they would be the next one. Just like that, Mo Sher killed more than 200 spiritual readers one by one. The other spiritual readers finally panicked. They couldn't stop this powerful spiritual reader at all. And this spiritual reader's target was very obvious. It was all the spiritual readers present. If they didn't escape, they would definitely die at the hands of this spiritual reader. Therefore, their only way out was to escape. And when they escaped, things would be even easier. Mo Sher's draconic will quickly spread out. Bang 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 bang. Minus 100 spiritual readers instantly exploded into a bloody mist. As a result, these spiritual psyche masters were frightened. Just now it was 10 by 10. This time, hundreds of them exploded. Then, no one knew if 1,000 would explode next. With this thought in mind, these spirit reader masters became even more flustered. They hurriedly scattered in all directions. Bang 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 bang. The more panicked they were, the faster they exploded. In addition, the sea dragon clone was constantly disturbing their minds. It could be said that Mo Sher had no difficulty in killing them now. After spending about 2 hours, Mo Sher had killed all of the 10,000 plus spiritual readers here. His draconic will had also reached 15,000. At the same time, in Tianlin City, Alpha Wolf Victor had also seen that several waves of werewolves had been killed by Mo Sher. His heart was filled with shock and anger. He thought that with so many werewolves and blood breeds, It wouldn't take much effort to capture a human. But he didn't expect that the werewolves would lose more than 100,000 werewolves and more than 16,000 werewolf spiritual readers. This human was actually so powerful. And that terrifying monster, with a sweep of its tail, hundreds of blood breeds died. Its huge mouth could swallow dozens of werewolves. Facing such a combination, the werewolves and blood breeds' advantage in numbers didn't have any effect at all. Preposterous! Preposterous! In his anger, he began to use his prophetic ability. Soon, an image appeared in his mind. At first, the image was just very blurry. But gradually, the image became clearer. He saw millions of blood breeds and millions of werewolves. So many blood breeds and werewolves surrounded that human in the center. There was no way out for him. In the end, his body swayed a few times and slowly fell to the ground. Seeing this, Wolf Victor couldn't help but feel happy. This image was enough. According to his many previous experiences, no matter how the process developed, the result was often the image he saw. In other words, this kid's ending was destined. Therefore, he immediately ordered all blood breeds and werewolves rush to the target location at full speed. Kill that human if you don't know the price. The Blood Wolf planet's communication was relatively backward. But even so, within 5 hours, his order had already spread throughout the Blood Wolf planet. All werewolves, blood breeds, and humans received the same order: kill that human at all costs. Chapter 398. No one would have thought of it. At this moment, the entire Blood Wolf star was carrying out a siege. Tens of millions of vampires and millions of werewolves were rushing to the same target location, intending to surround and kill the target. And this target was only a human. Of course, if they had to calculate more, their target was also that 1,000-meter-long monster. However, they were rushing to the target location, which was basically sending dragon thoughts to Emosher. Of course, as the number of werewolves and vampires increased, Emosher also had to change his strategy. He no longer rushed in and attacked with dragon thoughts. Instead, after killing 10 spirit readers, he teleported away. He went to another corner of the battlefield, teleported again, killed 10 people, and escaped again. This cycle repeated. As for those spirit readers, they couldn't figure out his location at all. In this way, it didn't seem like these people were going to surround and kill him. Instead, it seemed like they were being hunted by him alone. Of course, that Wolf Victor also knew about this situation. But at this moment he no longer thought about anything else. The image in his mind had already become the basis for all his decisions and judgments. He didn't care about the process, as long as the final result was enough. Thus, during this process, Emosher's dragon thoughts continued to increase. According to Earth's time, more than 10 days had passed. And in these 10 days, Emosher didn't stop for a moment. He continued to kill these spirit reader masters. The entire battlefield, with a radius of more than 100 kilometers, had long been enveloped by a thick blood fog. In the blood fog, the visibility was less than 10 meters. Moreover, the range of the blood fog was still expanding. And in these 10 days, Emosher was killing werewolf spirit readers almost every minute. The continuous killing made the killing intent on his body become stronger and stronger. Finally, on the 10th day, this killing intent actually formed a substance around his body. This murderous aura was like a blood mist, lingering around him within 100 meters. And as long as he willed, this blood fog would instantly turn into thousands of blood-red sharp blades, mincing any creature within 100 meters into meat paste. Emosher's pupils also changed from the initial black to dark red, bright red, and blood red because of the continuous killing. At this moment, he no longer had any other thoughts in his mind. There was only one thought in his mind: kill. At this point, he no longer cared about the blood breed, the werewolf, or the werewolf psychic master. In short, as long as it was something that his eyes could see and his dragon consciousness could detect, it would be his target. He wanted to kill them. He only wanted to kill. With such thoughts in mind, his mind was no longer as clear as before. At this moment, killing intent surged from his body. Behind him, a pair of blood-red wings spread out. His eyes were so red that they looked like they could bleed. He was like a demon king of slaughter. He did not know how long he had been killing for. He had no idea how many he had killed. Amidst this frenzied slaughter, a notification suddenly sounded in his mind. Dragon will has reached 100,000. You can advance. This reminder woke him up abruptly. He went straight into his dragon cave. The redness in his eyes slowly receded. The murderous aura on his body also slowly receded. He sat cross-legged in the dragon cave. He kept taking deep breaths. After more than 2 hours, his eyes finally regained their clarity. The murderous aura on his body had also been completely withdrawn. Only then did he speak in his mind. Advance. This advancement will take 5 minutes. Dragon will cannot be used during advancement. With the system's notification, the advancement began. During the advancement, Mo sure recalled the state just now and felt a lingering fear. Even he was afraid of that state just now. He was on the verge of going berserk. If he continued to develop, he would definitely go berserk. At that time, he would probably become a demon king who only knew how to kill. It seemed that he had to be more careful in the future. Thinking about it, after the dragon will advanced again, he would have more control over his heart. At that time, it should not be so easy for him to go berserk again. A moment later, another notification sounded in his mind. Advancement successful. Name, Emosure, Level 10 Scavenger, Level 7 Long Yensure, Evolution Direction, Titan Dragon. He had finally advanced. There was no need to kill on such a large scale anymore. This made Emosure heave a sigh of relief. However, he did not go out immediately. Instead, he planned to wait. He would go out after his state of mind had completely calmed down. At the same time, in the outside world, the millions of Blood Clan members and millions of werewolves were all very strange after Emosure suddenly disappeared. At first, they were all on high alert, worried that the kid would suddenly appear and attack them again. However, after a few hours, there was no movement at all. Did the kid suddenly disappear just like that? Hence, they started a carpet search around the area. In the end, at Assembly Point 3, they developed a clone of Emosure. Of course, they did not know that this was only Emosure's clone. They only knew that since their leader had asked them to kill this kid at all costs, they would do as they were told. However, this kid was really powerful, so they were very careful at first. However, after a few minutes, they realized that for some reason, this kid did not seem as scary as before. Only then did they swarm forward and cut down Emosure's clone. In Sky's Descent City, when the Alpha Wolf Victor saw this scene, he was instantly overjoyed. Sure enough, it was exactly the same as the scene in his mind. This kid was finally dead. He let out a long breath. He had always felt that he was the most powerful being on this planet. However, the terrifying degree of that kid just now made him feel that in front of this kid, he was afraid that he was not his opponent at all. Now that this kid was dead, everything was resolved. Then, the next step was to plan how to kill his way to the Flaming Land. Thinking of this, he began to gather the upper echelons of the werewolves, Blood Clan, and humans to discuss this matter together. 5 hours later, on the previous battlefield, amidst the thick blood mist, Yizichin looked at Yizichin. A figure quietly appeared. This person was none other than Emosure. His dragons will had reached level 7, so his consciousness was quite clear. Although there was a thick blood fog around him, his consciousness did not waver at all. Emosure was secretly delighted. It seemed that he would not go crazy again. Using his dragon's will to investigate, he found that most of the Blood Clan and werewolves had already dispersed. However, within a radius of 350 kilometers, there were still dozens of small groups of Blood Clan and werewolves. Then, the next step was to collect the Titan Dragon's blood and work hard to become a desolate hunter. At the same time, in Sky's Descent City, the Alpha Wolf Victor was discussing with the upper echelons of the Blood Clan and werewolves on how to go to the Flaming Land. However, at this moment, an image suddenly appeared in his mind. Chapter 399. Usually, if the alpha wolf Victor didn't actively foresee the future, he wouldn't be able to see the future in his mind. But this time, when he was discussing something with the others, a scene suddenly appeared in his mind. The scene was somewhat blurry. It was like a mosaic of water monsters, flying saucers, and savages in any video. In the scene was a city. In this city, there were tens of thousands of human figures. It was just that it couldn't be seen clearly whether this figure was a vampire, a werewolf, or a human. At this moment, in the distant sky, a huge figure flew over. That huge figure was actually more than 100 meters long. Its body was more than 100 meters long, and it had huge wings that were nearly 100 meters wide. It glided toward the city. The people in the city continuously attacked this huge figure. However, no matter if it was arrows, spears, or rocks, they couldn't cause any damage to this huge figure. When this huge figure flew over the city, it suddenly spat out a flame. The city instantly turned into a sea of fire. In the sea of fire, the creatures in the city roared, wailed, and rolled about. Just a flame was enough to turn the city into a purgatory. Then, that figure flapped its wings and flew into the sky again, swaggering away. Seeing this scene, the alpha wolf Victor couldn't help but tremble. Although the scene was mosaic and he couldn't see clearly what that huge black figure was. But from the bottom of his heart, he could feel how powerful that creature was. In front of that creature, even he felt that he was so small. Victor looked at the city outside the window and said to the werewolves and human higher-ups, "Retreat! Retreat! Everyone, retreat from Tianlin City." Those humans and vampires didn't know how powerful Victor's prophetic ability was. But all the werewolves knew how powerful their leader's prophetic ability was. In the past, their leader's every decision was absolutely correct. Therefore, they didn't have any doubts. They immediately got up and walked out, beginning to issue orders to the rest of the werewolves to retreat from the city. Seeing that almost all the werewolves had begun to retreat, the vampires hesitated for a few minutes and also began to give the order to retreat. As for those humans, the werewolves and vampires wouldn't care. Humans were too weak to be of much help in battle. Therefore, they didn't care whether humans lived or died. Within a short hour, the werewolves and vampires had all retreated from Skyfall City. The entire Sky's Descent City had returned to the hands of the humans in this short period of time. All the humans were dumbfounded. These werewolves and vampires had suddenly come and gone. Humans, on the other hand, knew nothing about it. Meanwhile, in the wilderness, Emosher was looking for a target. Although his fists were powerful, the werewolf's self-healing ability was too strong. His fists could not kill it. Therefore, he only had one target, the blood breeds. Moments later, his draconic will detected the locations of over 1,000 blood breeds. Then, with a thought, he teleported into the midst of the blood descendants. The vampires were resting on the spot. Seeing Emosher's sudden appearance, everyone was taken aback. After all, the battle prowess Emosher had displayed earlier was simply too fearsome. Even the spiritualists among the werewolves had been hunted down by this fellow. Wouldn't it be a matter of minutes for the bloodlings like them? In fact, they did want to fight. After Emosher appeared, he threw a punch at a level 10 evolved vampire. Bang! That level 10 evolved vampire was unable to resist at all. His brain exploded into a bloody mist. Then, Emosher started punching and kicking. With every punch, he could blow up 1 or even 2 or 3 vampires' heads. If he was lucky, he could blow up 4 or 5 vampires' heads with a kick. Seeing this, the surrounding vampires swarmed forward, wanting to kill Emosher. However, when they swarmed over, Emosher only needed to slightly suppress them with his draconic will. Most of the vampires couldn't even move. Only a small group of vampires that Emosher had purposely left behind could move. However, these vampires couldn't move at all when they saw their companions. They were terrified and hurriedly turned to escape. But where could they escape to? Although they were fast, they were nothing in front of Emosher's draconic will. They were easily killed by Emosher's punches. After killing this small group of vampires, Emosher's draconic will let go of another small group of vampires. This group of vampires had some guts. They didn't run away. Instead, they took out all of their special skills and attacked Emoshur. However, as long as Emoshur teleported away, all of their moves would fall through. Under Emoshur's violent suppression, this small group of vampires was all killed by Emoshur in less than half a minute. Then, batch after batch of vampires were killed by Emoshur. When the vampires in the distance saw Emoshur's violence, they wanted to escape. However, under the pressure of Emoshur's dragon sense, they felt as if they were being pressed down by 1,000 kilograms, unable to move. The werewolves who were resting nearby rushed over when they heard the news. When they saw Emoshur slaughtering tens of thousands of werewolves on his own, they couldn't help but feel a little surprised. This human strength was terrifying. Although most of the werewolf spiritualists had been killed by Emoshur, there were still some who escaped. At this moment, a werewolf spiritualist saw Emoshur's violence and immediately spread out his draconic will. "Lowly human, how dare you be so arrogant?" In the blink of an eye, he sent his spiritual will towards Emoshur. However, his action was noticed by Emoshur. In the next moment, Emoshur's enormous draconic will pressed down on his draconic will. The werewolf spiritualist felt Emoshur's enormous telekinesis and was shocked. His draconic will was on a completely different level from this guy's telekinesis. This guy's telekinesis could almost crush him. He quickly retracted his draconic will to protect himself. However, in the next moment, bang, his body exploded into a bloody mist under Emoshur's draconic will. His draconic will was only at level 1. Emoshur's level 7 draconic will was equivalent to a level 4 spiritualist. Moreover, the quality of Emoshur's draconic will was much better than that of a level 4 spiritualist. Even a level 4 spiritualist was nothing in front of Emoshur. Moreover, this was only a level 1 spiritualist. After killing this level 1 spiritualist, Emoshur continued to kill the vampires. As he continued to kill, he didn't dare to hear the system's notification in his mind. Killed a level 10 evolved blood breed. Obtained 10 drops of Titan dragon blood. Killed a level 10 evolved blood breed. Obtained 10 drops of Titan dragon blood. Chapter 400. Emoshur spent more than half an hour to kill all the vampires here. Then, he flew toward another group of vampires. Another half an hour later, he slaughtered all the vampires. Just like that, Emoshur slaughtered batch after batch of vampires. And these vampires couldn't do anything in front of the powerful Emoshur. Their advantage in numbers was useless in front of Emoshur. All the vampires within a few kilometers couldn't move at all under the suppression of the dragon will. After Emoshur killed the dozen or so vampires, he continued to kill the other dozen or so vampires. Just like that, time passed minute by minute, second by second, and Emoshur killed more and more werewolves. The amount of Titan dragon blood he consumed was also increasing. News of his strength and terror had spread throughout the entire Bloodwolf star. That guy isn't human at all. He's too strong. Neither the werewolves nor the vampires can stop him. Why does he only kill vampires and not werewolves? Not really. He also kills werewolves. It's just that he only kills the spiritualists among the werewolves. This guy is a complete demon. The leader of the vampires had sent several groups of vampires to surround that guy. Last time, that guy had the help of that huge monster, so they couldn't do anything to him. This time, for some reason, that huge monster didn't appear. So, they thought that they could kill that guy with their advantage in numbers. However, reality proved that the leader of the vampires was wrong. That guy was really powerful. Just his telekinesis was enough to suppress the vampires around him. And he only released a few dozen vampires each time. Those vampires were no match for him at all and could only be killed instantly. Just like that, several waves of blood race encirclement ended in failure. The leader of the vampires had no choice but to look for the werewolf leader, Victor. "Mr. Victor, the guy we were hunting before has appeared again." Victor frowned when he heard that. "You still have that huge monster with you?" The leader of the vampires shook his head. This time, for some reason, that huge monster didn't appear. but his strength seems to have increased. We sent over 100,000 vampires to encircle him. However, it was suppressed by his powerful telekinesis and could not move at all. In the end, the 200,000 vampires were all killed by him, one punch after another. Alpha Wolf Victor frowned when he heard that. His telekinesis is that strong? The leader of the kindred said, I'm here to ask Mr. Victor for help in dealing with that human. Alpha Wolf Victor pondered for a moment and shook his head. If he's really as strong as you say, then even we, the werewolves, can't do anything. The leader of the kindred laughed bitterly. I heard that there is a group of level 2 spiritualists hidden among the werewolves. If you are willing to let them fight, we will also send out all the level 10 psychic masters. If we work together, we should be able to subdue that kid. Victor stared at the vampire leader. You vampires are investigating us werewolves? The vampire leader said with a smile, likewise. You werewolves have also been investigating us vampires. Alpha Wolf Victor laughed and did not dwell on this issue. The vampire leader continued speaking. Mr. Victor said that we should let go of our past grudges and work together against the enemy. That human is too strong. We must work together with the werewolves. Otherwise, if he really destroys the entire vampire race, who knows if his next target will be the werewolves? Victor, the werewolf leader, was silent for a moment and nodded. What you said is not without reason. That guy is an outsider. Naturally, we have to work together to deal with him. We will do as you said. We will send out our spiritualists and you will send out all your telekinesis. We must destroy that kid. Therefore, Victor sent out 500 of his spiritualists. The vampires sent out almost all of their level 10 psychokinesis. Although the probability of the vampires producing a psychic master was very low, they had a large population. Therefore, the total number of psychic masters reached 50,000. Then, these 500 spiritualists and 50,000 level 10 psychic masters rushed toward Emosher's location. However, as they were rushing to the battlefield, a figure suddenly appeared in front of them. This figure was none other than the werewolf leader, Victor. When the 500 werewolf spiritualists saw Victor, they naturally half-knelt and saluted him. When the 50,000 vampires saw the werewolves saluting, they hesitated for a moment and saluted as well. After all, they were working together now. If they did not salute the werewolf leader, there might be some hostility between them. Just as they lowered their heads to salute the werewolf leader, an enormous spiritual will suddenly enveloped all of the vampire psychic grandmasters. How could these vampire psychic masters be a match for the werewolf leader? Furthermore, they were caught off guard. They only felt that their psychokinesis was being sucked in by a huge force, and they couldn't help but be drawn toward the werewolf leader. Even if they used all of their methods, they could not stop their psychic powers from flowing away. They all turned pale with fright. Mr. Victor, what do you mean by this? Victor sneered. You vampires should not exist in this world. Take this opportunity to destroy all of the most powerful psychic masters in the vampire race. This is the right way. No, Mr. Victor. If we vampires are destroyed, you werewolves will not have it easy either. Victor sneered again. You don't have to worry about that. As he spoke, he increased the absorption rate. The psychic powers of all 50,000 level 10 psychic masters were absorbed by Victor. At this moment, his spiritual sense had finally increased by 1 level. He had reached level 3 psychic. Although the hunting ground master of the 10th hunting ground had limited the levels of the werewolves and vampires in this hunting ground, it had only limited their physical growth. However, it did not limit the growth of their psychic powers. This was because according to their previous experience, with the environment of the Blood Wolf planet, the probability of producing a psychic master was very small. Even if they did produce a psychic reader, a level 1 psychic reader would be their limit. Therefore, there was no need to spend so much effort to limit them. However, they never expected that a peerless genius would appear on the Blood Wolf planet. Victor, with his talent, he had raised his spiritual sense to level 2. After so many years, he had reached the peak of level 2. However, no matter how strong his talent was, The environment of this planet was like this. He could not raise his spiritual sense by even half a step. Therefore, he came up with this idea to absorb the psychic powers of all the level 10 psychic masters of the vampire race to help him become a level 3 psychic. Chapter 401. Although the leader of the blood race had always been wary of Victor, he would never have dreamed that Victor would suddenly stab him in the back in the face of a strong enemy. Even Victor's subordinates, the 500 or so level 2 spiritualists, did not think of this. Victor had now advanced to level 3 spiritualist. He looked at the 500 confused werewolves in front of him. He said loudly, "You don't have to be surprised. If we werewolves want to break through this hunting ground and go to the real flaming continent, we have to keep improving ourselves. However, this is not enough. Even if I take you to the flaming dawn continent, where there are as many experts as there are clouds, we will still be stones under their feet, stones that they can step on whenever they want. We will be meat on their chopping board. They will cut us if they want to. Therefore, we need to use all means to become even more powerful." The 500 level 2 werewolf spiritualists understood their leader's good intentions. They raised their right arms and said in unison, "Leader is wise." Victor nodded, then raised his head, stretched his arms, and said passionately, "Now, tell me loudly. Do you want to be prey in the hunting ground and be hunted by the people of the flaming continent? Or do you want to be hunters and hunt the people of the flaming continent?" "Hunters! Hunters! Hunters!" All the werewolves shouted in unison. Victor continued to speak loudly, "Do you want to trample the lowly humans of the flaming continent under your feet? Do you want to turn them around and treat them as prey?" "Yes. Yes." All the werewolves' emotions were stirred up. Victor raised his arms. "If you want to follow me to the flaming continent and be hunters there, then now is the time to start." Before he finished speaking, his powerful spiritual thought suddenly enveloped all the werewolves. In the next moment, his spiritual thought began to extract the spiritual thoughts of the werewolves. All the werewolves were shocked. By the time they realized what Victor was thinking, it was already too late. In that instant, a third of their spiritual senses had been extracted by Victor. Their spiritual thought decreased, while Victor's spiritual thought increased. Under such circumstances, there was not much they could do even if they wanted to resist. Moreover, they were controlled by Victor's spiritual thought. They could not escape even if they wanted to. "Leader, why are you doing this?" "Leader, we have always been loyal to you. Why are you doing this to us?" "Chief, didn't we agree to go to the Flaming Dawn continent together?" There was a sinister smile on Victor's face. He said, "Give me your spiritual sense, and you will be with me forever. Wherever I go, all of you will go as well." Before he finished speaking, he stopped explaining. He increased the strength of the extraction. In an instant, the spiritual thoughts of all 500 werewolves entered Victor's body. At the same time, Victor's spiritual sense had advanced once again, reaching level 4. Victor spread out his spiritual senses. Sensing that everything within a radius of several hundred kilometers was under his control, he couldn't help but look up at the sky and howl at the moon. Roar! All living beings within a radius of several hundred kilometers trembled under his long howl. This was the suppression of the laws of nature. On this planet, he was the absolute king. One of a kind. In fact, Victor had never thought about attacking the people of the flaming continent from the very beginning. He didn't even think about attacking Emoshur. This was because he had already seen how strong Emoshur's mutated dire beast was. Even if he was 10 times or 100 times stronger, he wouldn't be able to fight against that mutated dire beast. Therefore, he only took this opportunity to gather all the level 10 grand psychics of the blood race. He absorbed all of their psychic power. At the same time, he also took this opportunity to gather all the level 2 grand psychics of the werewolves for him to absorb. Now, his spiritual sense level had reached level 4. Only when his strength reached this level would he have a certain degree of confidence to travel on the Flaming Dawn continent. In other words, everything he had done before was so that he could leave this planet. He would go to the Flaming Dawn continent himself. From the moment he knew that embark had appeared, he had never treated embark as an enemy. Now, if necessary, he could even treat embark as a partner. At the same time, he also had a premonition that the huge black shadow he saw must be related to this guy. After thinking about it, he turned his head and walked in the direction of embark. At this moment, embark didn't know about all of this. He was still killing nonstop. This time, he felt that he was controlling it very well. Although he was killing nonstop, he was always guarding his heart. And every few hours, he would stop to take a breath. First, he had time to devour the Titan dragon's blood that he had just obtained. Second, he also calmed his state of mind so that he wouldn't be so violent. However, what he didn't know was that his eyes had started to turn red again. And the murderous aura on his body was slowly seeping out of his body. After killing for more than 2 hours, embark's eyes had become even redder. At this moment, he no longer thought about anything and just guarded his heart. He also stopped thinking about anything and paused to calm his state of mind. Unknowingly, he had already fallen into the same state of killing from before. There was only one thing he wanted to do: kill. In his mind, there was only one word left: kill. He wanted to kill until the sky turned dark. He wanted to kill until the sun and moon lost their light. He wanted to destroy this world. More than 2 hours later, Victor, who was rushing to embark's location. His spiritual senses had already detected embark. It was also at this moment that an image appeared in his mind. In the image, a long saber in embark's hand chopped down on his head. His body was instantly sealed in ice. In the next moment, it shattered into blood-red ice shards on the ground. Seeing this scene, Victor's body couldn't help but tremble. He subconsciously stopped in his tracks and looked in the direction of embark. He didn't dare to use his spiritual senses to investigate again. Instead, he turned around and ran in another direction. In his perception, that guy was in a fit of anger at this moment. Whoever went up to provoke him would be unlucky. Even if he didn't have any ill intentions, he would probably run straight into the muzzle of the gun if he went over. Therefore, the plan now was to stay far away from that guy first. In fact, with embark's dragon senses, he had already discovered Victor when Victor was investigating him. But now, there was only killing in his eyes. There were so many vampires in front of him, but he didn't want to go so far to kill a werewolf. He naturally wouldn't do such a thing. As time passed, the murderous aura around him became stronger and stronger. His eyes once again became as red as blood. There was only one thing he wanted to do now: kill. Chapter 402. As time went by, embark's eyes grew redder and redder. The murderous aura around him grew thicker and thicker. At the same time, he was devouring more and more Titan dragon blood. He was getting closer and closer to a breakthrough. After a long time, the moon gradually set in the west. The sun rose in the east. According to the time on the Flaming Land, embark had been here for 2 months. According to the rules of the 10th hunting ground, the 500,000 yuan ticket could only stay here for 2 months. For every extra day he stayed here, he would be charged 10 times the price when he went back. Therefore, many people would return to Hunting Island number 10 if they needed to stay here for 2 months. They would purchase a new ticket before coming back. After all, the 10th hunting island wouldn't let you stay here indefinitely for 500,000 yuan. However, embark didn't have these thoughts at this time. There was only one thought in his mind: kill. Naturally, he didn't go back. When the sun rose, on the 10th hunting island of the Flaming Land, the computers had already reported the people who hadn't returned yet. Among these people were those who died on the Blood Wolf Star. After careful investigation, they found that embark was the only one who was still alive among these people. Therefore, they quickly reported this to the teleportation hall. As long as embark teleported back, they would contact embark immediately and charge him a high fee. At this moment, more and more vampires and werewolves had gathered around embark, unaware of what had happened. Embark didn't summon the Azure Dragon avatar and didn't use any energy. No matter how violent he was, He could only kill 4 or 5 people with one punch at most. It was far less visually impactful than killing dozens of spiritualists in an instant. Therefore, those vampires and werewolves thought that no matter how strong this guy was, he would run out of energy one day. They had millions of werewolves and vampires, and with their advantage in numbers, they would eventually kill this kid. However, in fact, Mo sure kept drinking the Titan dragon blood, and his body was constantly being modified by it. Therefore, the power he possessed was far beyond the imagination of these werewolves and vampires. It was no exaggeration to say that Mo sure could kill forever if he wanted to. Finally, with the passage of time, the sun set and the moon rose. The moon set again and the sun rose again. According to the Flame Origin Continent's time, Mo sure had been here for 4 months and 5 days. At this moment, Mo sure had gone completely berserk. His entire body was shrouded in killing intent. His eyes were so red that they looked like they could bleed. The blood wings on his back were so red that they looked like they could drip blood. Even the werewolves and vampires felt fear just by looking at Mo sure. They had surrounded this guy for 2 nights and 1 day, but this guy didn't seem to be exhausted at all. He didn't look like a human at all, nor did he look like a vampire, nor did he look like a werewolf. Instead, he was a demon that only knew how to kill. The werewolves and vampires had exhausted almost all of their methods. But he couldn't kill this kid at all. This kid was like an undying demon god. After fighting for so long, the vampires and werewolves were already thinking of retreating. However, at this moment, they were in a difficult position. Did they think they could stop fighting just because they wanted to? Would this guy let them go? Moreover, they had already paid such a huge price and lost so many of their compatriots. If they gave up now, wouldn't their compatriots have died in vain? Therefore, they could only continue to besiege him. At the same time, they were constantly thinking of a way. At the same time, Mo sure was constantly killing and devouring the dragon's blood. His body had already touched that limit. And it was different from before. In the past, Mo sure would stagnate when he reached the limit of level 10. He needed an opportunity to evolve. But this time, when Mo sure touched this limit, his body began to heat up. And it was even hotter than before. He was going to evolve directly. There was no need for an opportunity at all. In other words, his current frenzied slaughter was an opportunity for him to evolve. However, even so, he still didn't stop killing. Because at this moment, there was only one thought in his mind: kill. His body was extremely hot, but he didn't care. His blood was as hot as magma, but he didn't care. He only wanted to kill. After another 20 hours, at a certain moment, his body suddenly changed. The surface of his body began to be covered with a layer of black scales. His legs and arms turned into thick and powerful claws. On his body, on his back, the pair of blood dragon wings began to turn from red to black. However, they slowly condensed from illusory into substance. They formed a pair of black, wide wings. On the wings, a pair of extremely sharp claws shone with a chilling light under the sunlight. His head had changed as well. His face was also covered with black scales. Sharp thorns grew out of his head. He no longer looked like a human, but the head of a monster. A pair of eyes were as red as blood. Behind him, a tail full of sharp thorns grew out. As the shape of his entire body changed, his body was also changing. His body began to rapidly grow larger and longer. 10 meters, 20 meters, 40 meters, 60 meters. Finally, it stopped at 100 meters. At this moment, he had already transformed into a 100-meter-long dragon. Finally, Mo sure had evolved into a giant dragon. At the same time, a system prompt appeared in his mind: frowny face, evolution successful. The system's voice finally made Mo sure, who had been unconscious for a long time, regain some rationality. For the first time in more than 3 months, he communicated with the system in his mind. Check level. Name: Mo sure. Race: human, bloodthirsty demon dragon. Level: Level 1 bloodthirsty demon dragon. Level 1 desolate hunter. Level 7 long Nyen sure. Evolution path: ancient demon dragon. When Emosher saw this, he frowned. His consciousness also became a little clearer. Didn't you say that I was going to evolve into a Titan dragon? The system's voice replied, frowny face. During the evolution process, due to the host's continuous killing, his body was surrounded by killing intent, and his body mutated, so he evolved into a bloodthirsty demon dragon. What's the difference between a bloodthirsty demon dragon and a Titan dragon? The dragon race is also divided into levels. A Titan dragon is the lowest level existence among the dragon race. A bloodthirsty demon dragon is more than one level stronger than a Titan dragon. Especially in terms of combat power, it is infinitely close to the war dragon race, which was born for battle. And it is easier for a bloodthirsty demon dragon to level up. As long as it keeps killing, it can increase its level and combat power. Emosher frowned slightly. Do I have to walk the path of bloodthirsty killing? Chapter 403. The system continued to explain to Emosher. The advantage of the bloodthirsty demon dragon is its strong combat power and easy evolution. However, the downside was also obvious. Once he became a bloodthirsty demon dragon, he would have to kill continuously to level up. It was also because of this that the bloodthirsty demon dragon became the enemy of the entire dragon clan tens of thousands of years ago. The moment the dragon race discovers the bloodthirsty demon dragon, they will do their best to kill it. That's why, unless absolutely necessary, it's best not to reveal your bloodthirsty demon dragon form in front of the dragons. When Emosher heard this, he was filled with stubbornness. If that was the case, so what if he became the enemy of the entire dragon clan? If it was in the past, Emosher would have thought to lay low for a while and develop. No one would dare to do anything to him after he was fully developed. But now, perhaps due to the continuous killings in the past few months, his state of mind was affected. Therefore, his idea was to kill whoever dared to provoke him. So what if he was from the dragon race? At this moment, the expressions of the surrounding vampires and werewolves changed drastically when they saw Emosher transform into such a gigantic dragon. Although this giant dragon was not as large as the 1,000-meter-long monster that had appeared before, it was still very powerful. However, this dragon was brimming with murderous intent. A pair of blood-red eyes released a chilling murderous intent. It seemed that it was only interested in one thing: killing. These vampires and werewolves were barely able to muster enough energy to fight against the 1,000-meter-long monster. But in the face of this terrifying dragon, they didn't have the slightest intention to fight. Their only thought was to escape. Emosher spread his wings and roared into the sky. A dragon roar filled with killing intent came from his mouth. Oh, roar! With a long howl, all the beasts were frightened. Within a radius of 100 kilometers, all living beings were trembling in fear. Emosher stomped on the ground with his hind claws. The ground beneath his feet instantly cracked. With a flap of his wings, he leaped into the air. A pair of giant wings that were nearly 100 meters wide spread out. The pair of giant wings were not in perfect condition. Instead, there were holes of various sizes on them. This was the symbol of the bloodthirsty demon dragon. Ordinary dragons had strong self-healing abilities, so after their wings were injured, they would recover very quickly. However, due to the bloodthirsty demon dragon's excessive thirst for blood, certain aspects of their bodies were lacking. As a result, their wings were usually tattered and tattered. It was like a tattered bedsheet. However, this did not affect their ability to fly at all. Emosher soared 10,000 meters into the sky. It made a circle in the sky, flying up and down, left and right. He was getting used to his body and his wings. When the bloodthirsty demon dragon was flying, it had two forms. One was in the normal state, where he could reach a speed of more than 300 meters per second. The other was to use energy to assist flight, which could reach up to 10,000 meters per second. Emosher tried to switch between the two states, constantly changing his flying posture in the sky. Perhaps it was because the advancement of this major realm was different from what the system had planned. It was equivalent to not completing the mission given by the system, so there was no system reward. However, this body alone was much better than any other reward. On the ground, all the vampires and werewolves who were still trembling just now took advantage of the fact that this giant dragon was not paying attention to them and hurriedly fled in all directions. After Emosure adapted to this body, he turned around and dived toward the ground. There were over 1,000,000 vampires and werewolves gathered on the ground before. Now, it was not so easy for them to escape in a short period of time. Emosure's flying speed in his normal state was 300 meters per second. However, when he dived, he was already infinitely close to the speed of sound. How could the werewolves and vampires on the ground escape? Emosure swooped down as if covering the sky and the sun. His 2 hind claws scratched the ground. Dozens of vampires and werewolves were instantly clawed into meat paste by his claws. Screams of terror rang out in the surroundings. Then, Emosure flapped his wings again. In their panic, the vampires quickly spread their demon wings and fled in all directions. Emosure let out a dragon roar and opened his cave-like mouth. Boom! The scorching red flame dragon's breath shot out. Suddenly, a large area of the sky seemed to be reflected in a fiery red color. Within a radius of 1,000 meters, all the vampires who were fleeing were swallowed by the sea of fire. Then they screamed and fell from the sky. After they landed, they kept rolling in the fire, trying to extinguish the flames on their bodies. However, the red flame dragon's breath was not an ordinary flame. Not to mention rolling, even if you poured water on it, it would not be able to extinguish it in a short period of time. As a result, hundreds of vampires died just like that amidst the screams. At the same time, a number appeared in Emosure's mind: frowny face kill points, 1100. It seemed that killing these level 10 werewolves and level 10 evolved vampires did not bring him many kill points. Emosure dived a few more times, and the red flame dragon's breath continued to shoot out. The area within a radius of dozens of square kilometers became a sea of fire. In this sea of fire, screams and cries could be heard continuously. In the end, apart from a few vampires and werewolves who managed to escape, the 1,000,000 vampires and werewolves here were all exterminated by Emosure. A first-grade bloodthirsty demon dragon's combat power was probably comparable to a level 1 Grand Desolate Master. Most importantly, when the bloodthirsty demon dragon released its dragon's might, the low-level creatures below didn't even have the thought of running away. They could only watch as this terrifying dragon descended from the sky. However, even though he was constantly killing, Emosure did not only have the thought of killing in his mind like before. His mind was still very clear. He constantly reminded himself that he could not fall into the same state as before. This was also a unique characteristic of the bloodthirsty demon dragon. Bloodthirsty demon dragons seem to only know how to kill, but their minds were always clear. In this way, Emosure would no longer be on the verge of going insane like before. In the end, after exterminating these 1,000,000 vampires and werewolves, Emosure's kill points finally reached 100. He had also successfully advanced to a second-grade bloodthirsty demon dragon. At the same time, he discovered that his hunting level had also risen to a level 2 Desolate Master. Emosure couldn't help but feel a little happy. It seemed that the bloodthirsty demon dragon's level was related to the Desolate Master. When the bloodthirsty demon dragon leveled up, the Desolate Master's level would also increase. However, he did not know whether the bloodthirsty demon dragon's level would also increase if the Desolate Master's level increased. However, now that he had advanced to level 2, killing these vampires and werewolves would not give him many kill points. Moreover, if Emosure remembered correctly, it was almost time to go to the ancient dragon battlefield. There were no other restrictions on going to the ancient dragon battlefield apart from being a level 1 Desolate Master. However, the ancient dragon battlefield had a low tide every 10 years. It was safest to go during the low tide. Although Emosure had now advanced to a bloodthirsty demon dragon, he had never been to the ancient dragon battlefield and did not know much about it. Therefore, it was better to go during the low tide. Chapter 404. After Emosure became a bloodthirsty demon dragon, one of his skills had also been upgraded. The blood dragon's eye had been upgraded to the demon dragon's eye. In addition to all the previous abilities of the blood dragon's eye, the demon dragon's eye also had another ability, a special deterrent to infected creatures. When Emosher activated the blood dragon's eye, the werewolves and blood breeds would not dare to move as long as he glanced at them. They would also obey Emosher's orders. This was the new ability of the blood demon's eye. Next, Emosher's body quickly shrank with a thought. The scales, giant wings, long tail, and sharp claws on his body all disappeared. He returned to his human form. However, when he transformed into his dragon form, the clothes on his body were torn apart, and he was now naked. Fortunately, there was no one around. He had to take out another set of clothes from the miniature world and put it on. At the same time, he sighed in his heart. Transforming into a dragon was powerful, but it was a bit of a waste of clothes. Then he went to the coordinates. Half an hour later, he had returned to the teleportation hall of the 10th hunting island. As soon as he appeared, 2 hunters from hunting island number 10 said to Emosher, "Brother Emosher, you're the leader of this hunting island." "Sir, according to the rules, each ticket can only stay on the 10th hunting island for 2 months. You've stayed on the 10th hunting island for 5 months and 3 days. If you exceed 2 months, you'll have to pay 10 times the amount. If you exceed 63 days, you'll have to pay 80,000 per day. After deducting the change, you'll have to pay 5 million. After Emosher became a bloodthirsty demon dragon, his vision had broadened a lot. His vision had far exceeded the flaming beginning continent. He was going to become an immemorial demon dragon in the future. Naturally, he would not care about such a small amount of money. Although the 10th hunting island was a bit too shady, they had already told him about it before going to the Bloodwolf Star, so it was not too bad. Most importantly, Emosher did not lack money. He nodded. "I'll pay now." The 2 hunters were stunned and looked at Emosher carefully. They thought that they would scare this guy when they said 5 million. They did not expect this guy to be so straightforward. It seemed that he was another rich young master. Thinking of this, a smile appeared on their faces. He hurriedly gestured towards Emosher, "Young master, this way please." One of them took Emosher to pay the bill while the other went to get the manager. In the face of such a rich young master, he had to inform the manager. Soon, the manager also walked over quickly. With a face full of smiles, he said, "Young master, I am the manager of the 10th hunting ground. My surname is Ma. You can call me Xiao Ma. I'm sorry, but we have rules on Hunting Island 10, and we have to follow them. But we're all humans, and we have to be humane. Therefore, I can give you a 20% discount. Just give me 4 million. Emosher did not stand on ceremony and paid 4 million yuan directly. Then, he walked away with a smile on the manager's face. This was the benefit of being rich. If he didn't have the money, Emosher would probably have forced him to leave. With Emosher's strength, no one would be able to stop him if he wanted to leave. However, there would be a lot of trouble. Now that he paid directly, not only would it save him a lot of trouble, but this guy would also have to flatter him with a face full of smiles. Although Emosher did not think that his words were true, everyone liked to hear good words. After all, it was good to be in a good mood. After leaving Hunting Island 10, Emosher returned to Hunting Island 1. Only then did he take Emma and her son out of Micro-World. When the people on Hunting Island 1 saw Emosher, they could not help but feel a little surprised. Because at this moment, Emosher seemed to have the faint domineering aura of a king. When they saw Emosher, they could not help but have the urge to worship him. Happy also came out to welcome him. For the past 5 months, she had been missing Emosher all the time. She missed him so much that she could not eat or sleep. She seemed to have lost a lot of weight. When she saw Emosher, she no longer cared about being reserved. She quickly stepped forward and threw herself into Emosher's arms. Leaning against Emosher's broad and warm chest, she could no longer hold back the tears in her eyes. They flowed down her cheeks and wet the clothes on Emosher's chest. She hugged Emosher tightly as if she was afraid that Emosher would leave again. Emosher also hugged Happy tightly. This time, he had been very busy during the 5 months he was away. However, as long as he was free, Happy's figure and her smile would appear in his mind uncontrollably. Moreover, if he had Happy by his side, he would not have fallen into the endless slaughter so easily. When he felt Happy's heartbeat, he finally spoke. "From now on, I'll take you wherever Brother Mo goes." When Happy heard that, tears blurred her eyes once again. She nodded heavily. When the people around them saw that, they quietly dispersed. They left the time for Mo and Happy. There was no specific time for the opening of the ancient dragon battlefield, only a general area. Therefore, Mo did not need to be too anxious. He stayed on Hunting Island number 1 for a while longer. After evolving into a bloodthirsty demon dragon, he could completely control his state of mind and would not go berserk again. However, after 5 months of continuous slaughter, he needed some time to calm down. Otherwise, it would not be a good thing if his murderous aura was too strong. It might even endanger the people around him. Therefore, he stayed on Hunting Island number 1 for a whole month. During this month, he did not think or do anything. Every day, he just accompanied Happy, watched the sunrise and sunset, listened to the wind, and listened to the sound of the sea. In such peaceful days, Emo's state of mind gradually calmed down. The murderous aura in his body also lessened by a lot. At the same time, the Heavenly Gold Sect, which was ranked first in the 16 prefectures of Serene Cloud. The Great Elder's most talented disciple had been on Hunting Island number 10 for 5 months. In fact, in the 3rd month, they had already sent people to the Blood Wolf Star to cause chaos. The Blood Breeds and the werewolves were fighting. They thought that the disciple might have died in the war between the werewolves and the Blood Breeds. No one could be blamed for this. Therefore, the matter came to an end. However, there was no such thing as an impenetrable wall in the world. There was a rich young master who stayed on Hunting Island number 10 for 5 months. After he returned, the news that he had paid a few million slowly spread. At the same time, Mo planned to go to the ancient dragon battlefield after staying on Hunting Island number 1 for a month. To go to the ancient dragon battlefield, a wormhole teleportation device was required. Mo had already obtained this teleportation device a long time ago. Right now, he only needed to activate it. Of course, this time he brought Happy with him. The two of them turned into bluish-white balls of light and disappeared from Hunting Island number 1. When they reappeared, the scene in front of them had changed. There was an undulating mountain range here. Mo used Dragon's Will to investigate. Within a radius of more than 300 kilometers, there were mountains of all sizes. Chapter 405. Mo used his Dragon's Will to investigate. Within a radius of hundreds of kilometers, there were mountains of all sizes. However, it was a little different from what Mo had imagined. In his imagination, the ancient dragon battlefield should be dilapidated, gloomy, and cold. But here, it was spring, flowers were blooming, and orioles were singing and swallows were dancing. It was a scene full of vitality. Seeing such a scene, Happy was naturally in a good mood. Mo was happy to see Happy, and he was also very happy. Mo took out the map of the ancient dragon battlefield and found that this was only the edge of the ancient dragon battlefield. The real ancient battlefield was still more than 300,000 kilometers to the west. He was not in a hurry to travel. He flapped his wings and flew forward slowly with Happy. He flew through the mountains full of wildflowers as if he was wandering in a painting. After flying for half a day, Mo saw that the sky was about to turn dark. He said in his mind, "System, sign in." Since he had come to the ancient dragon battlefield, Missouri did not want to go back in a short time. He wanted to go to every corner of the ancient dragon battlefield and sign in here. The system's voice immediately sounded in his mind, frowny face, sign in successful. Sign in location, periphery of the ancient dragon battlefield, 100,000 mountains, sign in reward, 10 strands of Dragon's Will. 10 strands of Dragon's Will for each sign-in was not bad. Although it was a little less, this was only the periphery of the ancient dragon battlefield. The closer he got to the center of the ancient dragon battlefield, the more good things he would get. Gradually, the sun slowly set in the west. Emo planned to have dinner with Happy and rest on the spot. With Happy out this time, Emo did not have to bring any dry food. He only brought ingredients. Wouldn't it be better to let Happy cook? Emo took out the ingredients, and Happy began to get busy. Emo helped Happy by the side. But at this moment, a figure appeared more than 300 meters to the west of them. This figure looked a little like a deer, but it had a pair of small dragon-like wings. It could not fly, but it could jump very high. Emo could not recognize what kind of creature it was. However, he could detect that this creature had dragon's will. That's right, it wasn't psychokinesis or spiritual sense, but dragon sense. The creature hopped towards Emo and the others. At the same time, the dragon will in its body spread out and headed straight for Emo. Emo checked its draconic sense and found that it had already reached level 3. It was only a level 3 dragon psyche, yet it wanted to attack Emo. This was not something that Emo would take seriously. His draconic will immediately counterattack and envelop the creature. In the blink of an eye, the dragon will of this creature was devoured. The creature's body instantly shriveled up. After a while, it turned into a dried corpse. A system notification popped up in Emo's mind. Devoured level 3 dragon psyche, obtained 3 strands of dragon psyche. Dragon psyche, 13100000. Devouring this fellow's dragon will would allow Emo to obtain 3 strands of dragon will. That made Emo delighted. If there were more of these creatures, wouldn't his dragon will level up again? Just as he was thinking about this, another creature appeared more than 500 meters away. This creature also had a level 3 dragon will. However, it didn't look like the previous creature. Instead, it looked more like a walking tree. The tree was more than 10 meters tall, its branches swaying constantly as it shuttled through the forest. Although it didn't have eyes, its huge body didn't touch any other branches when it shuttled through the forest. It was very strange. At the same time, its dragon will also attacked Emo. However, it was almost instantly devoured by Emo. The body of the tree was also shrinking rapidly. After a while, it turned into a dried-up tree stump that was only about 3 meters tall. Another system notification popped up in Emo's mind. Level 3 draconic sense devoured. Emo has 3 strands of draconic sense. Draconic sense 16100000. Following that, Emo devoured a few ladybug monsters, a few monsters that looked like wildflowers, and even a rock monster. In short, these monsters came in all shapes and sizes. Emo plundered the memories of these monsters and looked carefully. He found that these monsters' memories were very messy. Many of the monsters' memories were just simple scenes. However, Emo had plundered many of these monsters' memories and finally understood why there were so many of these strange monsters. It turned out that on the ancient dragon battlefield, the Long Nien or Long Nien who died among the dragons would slowly disintegrate with the passage of time if they didn't have any special obsession. They would disintegrate into countless fragments. These fragments of draconic sense would unconsciously attach themselves to various other things. In the end, these things attached to the fragments of draconic sense would become all kinds of monsters. Most people thought that the ancient dragon battlefield was very dangerous. Even the periphery was very dangerous because they couldn't deal with these monsters. These monsters were not afraid of energy attacks or physical attacks. Only mental attacks could restrain them. However, their telekinesis was too strong. Those psychic masters would also have their telekinesis stolen under their mental attacks. Just this point alone was enough to scare off many people. Only those who were close to level 10 desolate hunters dared to wander around the ancient dragon battlefield at night. Those who only had the strength of a level 1 desolate hunter could only find a place to hide at night as soon as possible. Furthermore, if something went wrong and they were discovered, they would be killed by these monsters. Therefore, most level 1 desolate hunters didn't dare to enter the ancient dragon battlefield. In just one night, more than 300 level 3 monsters had appeared. This also made Emo's draconic sense reach more than 900. As these monsters were still some distance away, Emo killed them. Therefore, he didn't know that the forest was so dangerous at night. The next morning, they continued to fly west. It took them more than 5 days to reach the real entrance of the ancient dragon battlefield. At this time, embark's draconic sense had reached more than 4,700. The real entrance of the ancient dragon battlefield was guarded by Heavenly Gold Sect disciples. These Heavenly Gold Sect disciples were all level 5 desolate hunters. They guarded the entrance so that only Heavenly Gold Sect disciples or those who were related to the Heavenly Gold Sect could enter. At this time, they were discussing something. "Hey, have you heard? Senior E. Buffon might not have been killed by the Blood Clan or the werewolves, but by someone from the Flaming Continent. Someone from the same batch as him who entered the 10th hunting ground." "That's impossible. Who would be so bold as to kill a disciple of the Heavenly Gold Sect? Even in the entire Flaming Continent, there aren't many forces who would dare to kill an important disciple of the Heavenly Gold Sect." Another disciple shook his head. "There are always exceptions. According to the information I received." At this point, the disciple paused. The other disciples were intrigued and asked anxiously, "Tell me. Why don't you tell me?" The disciple shook his head. "It's useless. The Cliff-Cutter Dog won't show mercy." You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.